What I'm saying is, I can't be doing with games. It stresses me out where it throws every system at you at once.
Got you. Yes, where it's just like piled on. It's too much.
Yeah, I like it where it's a bit at a time. So the first 5 minutes, all you've got to learn is the navigation system, how you run around the map. Then it's a bit of combat. Then it's a bit of magic. Then it's how you use money. Then it's how you upgrade. And just layer it on a little bit by a bit. Don't expect me to know all of that in the first 5 minutes of the game.
Got you. Yeah, I mean, another thing which I'm sort of encountering at the moment, I'm sort of towards the end of a let's play of Doom Eternal, the latest Doom game, which is fantastic. It's absolutely superb. They've done a great job sort of taking the basic formula of the Doom games and extenuating on it. You're just adding in little bits here, tweaking bits and pieces there. But there's just, it's a superb piece of work, but there are just one or two elements where they've over-egged the pudding a little bit. You know, they've tried to introduce the last Doom game, Doom 2016, which was a reboot of the entire franchise, was superb because it did away with all the complexities that have built up around first-person shooters over the last decade, and it was just a silly, ridiculous, fun action game.
Yeah, you just ran from one room to another, shot everything in it, and just kept moving.
That was it.
Just like the classic Doom, basically.
That was it. That was the whole game, and it was glorious. It worked so well. This is kind of the same. It's got that same basic structure, but there are a few little sort of things ladled onto the combat. There's a few like demons that require particular kinds of tactics to defeat. And there's one tiny little thing where they've taken that too far. It's a demon called the Marauder, and he only turns up a couple of times, but every time he turns up, the pace of combat just stops.
Yeah, that's a bit. It kind of lifts it out of it, doesn't it?
Totally. Like every other new demon they've introduced is great. They work so well in the flow of, like, it's so furious, it's so quick, it's so, you know.
Yeah, well, that's what Doom's supposed to be, isn't
it? It's so much fun. The Marauder has got this. He feels like he's from a different game. That's the thing.
Oh, okay.
You know, he looks great, and his background is great, but suddenly with the Marauder, what you've got to do is stop and focus on him and him alone. Because if you don't, he's going to kill you. And you can only hit him at very particular points in his movement cycle.
Oh yeah, that doesn't feel like a Doom game, does it?
It's wrong. It's so wrong. And if you hit him at any other point, he punishes you. He summons like these spectral dogs that start gnawing on you. Meanwhile, while you're focusing on him, you've got all of this frenetic combat going on around you, and you just end up dying all the time. And it gets really annoying, I'll be honest.
Yeah, Doom isn't supposed to be the sort of game where you have to do the same bit over and over and over, is it? It's not meant to be that kind of a game.
Well, it's bizarre because he's baffling. Unlike any of the other demons, this isn't true for any of the others. He's bafflingly immune to certain weapons, like your super weapons, like your BFG and everything. And it's like, that doesn't really make sense. You know, even within the context of the mythology, that doesn't make sense. So he is just like the fly in the ointment. The game does amazing things. The environment is great. The new mythology is awesome. The new demons and monsters and things they've ladled in are amazing. The environments are just out there. They're brilliant. You know, they're just wonderful. But that demon, whenever he turns up, all you can hear on my videos whenever he turns up is,
yeah, him again.
Yeah. And the thing is, when he's first introduced, he's actually introduced as a boss, and that's fine. In a boss arena,
it's a one-off thing.
Yeah, absolutely fine. I think, and that's what they should have left him as. They should have just left him as this boss creature that you fight, and that's it. When he starts turning up in the normal arenas, where there are loads of other demons teleporting in around him, and you need to concentrate on them, on him, it actually just gets annoying. It's not even that he's difficult. It's not really that. He isn't really, once you learn how to fight him. It's the fact that he slows the pace of combat right down. And suddenly you've got this different playing style, which is antithetical to everything else the game throws at you.
Yeah, I bet it is. It's a bit of a jump outside what it's supposed to feel like and everything. Right. And I can imagine that being annoying.
It just doesn't really work for me. I didn't like the Marauder. And in fact, I had a look, and it turns out a lot of other people don't like the Marauder.
Well, that's interesting. If you know, it's not just you. I've been playing that. I got the Avengers game recently.
Oh, which apparently, yeah, I've heard a lot about the Avengers game.
Now, interestingly enough, given what my job is, my day job is I'm a software tester.
Right.
So I don't do it for games, but the principles of it is very similar.
Right.
I do it for finance software. Basically, someone develops a piece of software, I get sent it, and I have to find everything that's wrong with it and send it back, basically.
Right. Got you.
Whether or not they pay attention to what I found is not up to me. That's but obviously you have that for games as well.
Yeah.
In fact, Lucy, who is in our reading for Christmas Carol, she works for PlayStation as a tester on this kind of thing. So when I was playing that game, I immediately thought this hasn't been properly tested.
Yeah.
Or it has, and they've ignored the results because they wanted to meet a deadline. Because, for instance, I'm often the cause of things not going out when they're meant to. So, like, they'll say, we want to release this on August the 1st. They send me the software on June the 1st, and I find a bunch of stuff in it that's going to take more than 2 months to fix.
Got you.
Whether or not they decide to push that deadline back is not up to me, but... they quite often they don't want to push the deadline back, so they ignore it, and it goes out with those faults, and then a bit later they might do a patch for it or something.
Right, yeah.
And Avengers, the game is full of stuff like that, and I don't know about you, but I find it all the more annoying when there's glitches and stuff. All things that just don't quite work the way they should. When it's a game that's clearly a big, expensive game.
Yes. Oh, that annoys me to no end.
If I bought a game from a third, fourth, fifth party studio for about 15 quid and it's got little bugs and stuff in it, I don't mind so much.
It's
fine. But when I'm playing something that's clearly got a team of hundreds, if not thousands of people working on it, it's a AAA studio. They've bought one of the biggest licenses in fiction media at the moment. And then I've got stuff like, I'm playing as Iron Man, and his controls are great, the graphics are great, the voice acting's great, and you feel like you're in the middle of an Avengers battle, and it's all great, and you think, oh, this is great. And then I turn around, and Hulk's facing a wall just running up against it.
Right.
And you just think, oh yeah, okay. And there's shit like that happens.
Well, there's no excuse, is there? I mean, when you've got
the boss will just disappear.
Right. When you
can't finish the level.
When you've got those resources behind you, and you've got a studio with that amount of raw power, there's just no excuse, is there?
No, it's just it's more annoying than it is on a cheaper game. There's stuff like that, and other things like. I don't like the way sort of you have to micromanage things. So like the upgrade system should be massively simplified.
Right.
If I'm playing as the Hulk, for instance, I shouldn't have to be going into 5 different screens deciding which piece of equipment to equip to make him 0.3% more efficient. And, do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like I'm playing as the Hulk for
I was going to say, it's not a subtle type of play, is it? You don't need that. You just don't need that.
Now, if I'm playing as Iron Man, and it's a choice of, do I want to assign more power to my repulsors or my rockets or my unibeam? Fair enough. But, the degree to which you've got to micromanage your upgrades on it is ridiculous.
Well, a lot of the time, that is just busy work, isn't it? When developers throw shit like that in, it is specifically designed to elongate the game, basically.
Definitely.
To synthetically make the game longer. There's a game, do you remember the Fable series?
Yes.
From a little way back.
Yeah.
Now, that's always been... I mean, that was a Peter Molyneux project, so that was always going to be trouble. But I kind of liked the first 2 Fables. They were problematic, but they were kind of fun, The third one came out, and that one was just a shonky mess. It had great production values. It had great voice actors, It
did.
It had amazing art design. But the game was a shonky, unfinished mess. It was just it was just an unfinished mess. The biggest problem I had with it, Fable 1 and Fable 2, the interface system is a simple, classic RPG system. You press pause, menus come up. Great, easy, very easy to use, no problem. Fable 3, because the game is so clearly unfinished, they were clearly rushing it to get it out the door at the end. They've tried to synthetically elongate it, so when you press pause, you can't go into menu systems. You've got to go to this other place, this sanctuary.
Yes, I remember that. Now you've said it.
So you've got like a load screen to take you from the game to the sanctuary. Then you've got to navigate the sanctuary. So you've got to wander into different rooms to do shit like...
To do whether it's magic or weapons or whatever, And
I'm like, why isn't there just a bloody system? Why isn't there just a radial system or something, you know? This does not work. Every time I've got to do something really simple, I've got to go to this other place. I've got to wait for the abysmal loading times. I've got to go into the appropriate room, which also takes abysmal loading times. Then I've got to mess about with something that's purely superficial that makes no difference whatsoever anyway. And then I've got to go back to the game. It's like, this is busy work. This is designed to elongate what is ultimately a very short game.
Yeah, well, I think that's the same with the Avengers. But the other two things about it that I don't like, which might just be personal preference, is that one, I don't know if you're the same as me with this, but I don't do online gaming.
Nah,
I play on my own or with other people in the same living room.
Yeah.
That's it.
Likewise.
This was sold as you can play it online if you want, but it's also a thing. Absolutely not true.
Right.
It is very much an online game that you happen to be able to play offline, and you get like a third of the experience of it.
Yeah, it's designed to be a multiplayer experience.
But it wasn't sold as that.
Right.
Now, games that are fine. So, like for instance, something like the Conan Exiles game, for instance.
Right.
Very much an online game. You can play offline, but it's pushed as an online game, and there's no secret about the fact that that is what this is.
Yeah.
So if you buy it anyway and play offline, you know that you're not getting the experience you're supposed to, and that's fair enough. But the Avengers is very much pushed as one that it's in equal parts offline and online, and it's not. It's really not.
Yeah, that's so scurrilous. They've been doing that for a while, actually, video game companies, because they want the best of both worlds, you know?
Yeah.
It's because they want to target all demographics. It's not good enough for them to just target the market they're going for and focus on them, you know?
But then you end up with something middle of the road that doesn't really please anybody.
Right, exactly, And I know for a fact that Avengers game has gone down badly with a lot of people, you know.
Well, the other thing that I didn't like on it is the again, it's supposed to be narrative driven. It's supposed to be a story game. It's supposed to be cinematic, right? You know, like the God of War, where you just keep moving, you're going from one place to another. It's fantastic. You finish that and you feel like you just sat through an epic movie or something.
Yeah,
that's what
exactly
Avengers is meant to be. But it's not, because you get to end of one level, and then to do the next level, it's more like a game like a Borderlands sort of thing, where you need to be a certain level, otherwise you're going to die immediately on that next level.
Right,
then you've got to repeat old levels over and over to get your character upgraded to the point where you can then do the next one. And it's like you said about busy work, it's that again. It's like, this is just to elongate the campaign, isn't it? Because if it weren't for this, I'd probably finish it in 4 hours.
Right, and not only that, I mean, that is very retrograde. That used to be like the way games were designed way back when, you know, you had to grind to get... But now, I mean, really, in the post-Dark Souls era, there's no excuse for that. There's just no excuse, because video games have become just much more sophisticated than that, you know? Like,
well, you get stuff like adaptive difficulty, don't you?
Exactly.
Where the game senses that you're struggling, so it makes things a bit easier for you. Or it senses that you're doing too easily, and it makes it a bit harder.
Or it's just built into the game, like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, where the encounters are just hard. They're just difficult. And you've just got to... It is skill-based rather than whether you've upgraded, you know. It's how good you are at the game. You know, so you have to... I know there's the whole thing, you know, get good. You know, that's what you have to do. There's, like, real learning involved, which a lot of the more sophisticated games are doing now, you know. They're taking the onus away from, like, the systems of the game and giving it to you. So, like, in Bloodborne, Dark Souls, for example, you will die and die and die and die again, regardless of what level you're at or what equipment you've got. Every new encounter, you'll die and die and die and die and die and die again. And the only way to figure it out is to learn. You've got to look at, like, the tells, you've got to look at the way the creature or the encounter moves, how it signifies its attacks, you know, and you've got to work out how to fight. And I mean, I love that. A lot of people don't, because it is really hard. it makes it a genuine learning experience. And when you click, you know, once you've got it, you're like, it's still hard, but you've got it, you know, it's like, right, okay, so the way to avoid that attack is like this, and then this opens this character up to a backstab or something, you know? That is another way they're introducing difficulty, which I applaud massively, because it means that it's not fake. You know what I mean? It means that it's not like, well, if I just grind enough, I'll be powerful enough to
exactly.
take this,
it's just
you know?
numbers based. You can't do this next level, not because you haven't got skilled enough yet, not because you haven't learned the mastery of how to use your character's techniques. No, it's because this level needs you to be level 20 and you're level 10. That's why you can't do it.
Which is bullshit.
And it's like,
you know?
it's such outdated bollocks making you do the same levels over and over again. And from a narrative perspective, it doesn't half ruin the cinematic effect.
Right.
But it's like you're watching an Avengers film and you're 45 minutes in, but you can't watch the last battle yet. You've got to watch the first half of the film 3 times before you can get to the last battle.
Right. Well, let's even look at like a similar franchise from years ago, from almost a decade ago. Look at Batman Arkham Asylum.
Yes.
Which was amazing.
Yeah, it
just
is
a stunning like narrative experience, a comic book franchise game that captures like what I got from that more than anything was you feel like the damn Batman.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
You know, you feel predatory, you feel stealthy. The story is excellent. The encounters are wonderful and clever. There is an element of backtracking, but it works. You know, because it's exploration based. You're opening up new areas and whatnot, and having different encounters. Now that was ages ago. That was like last console generation.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Well,
you know?
two back
now. Yes, two generations now. And if that's a better game than like the Avengers, if it's better on almost every level, then there's something terribly wrong, isn't there?
I think the Avengers game would have benefited from either, well, for a start, it needed more time. It wasn't ready to come out of the oven. That's obvious. But if it either said it's a purely online game and gone fully down that track,
right,
like a Sea of Thieves type of thing, that kind of game, or it's a sole play it at home on your own cinematic story like God of War, that kind of thing, or the Spider-Man game on PS4. Either one, and stuck to that, then it could have been a really good game either way.
Yes, if it had some focus.
Yeah, but it's been by trying to be everything, it ends up failing across the board.
It's funny how often that happens, isn't it? I mean, like, you look at, like, you know when the Resi franchise was really failing?
Yeah.
When you had, like, Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6, which, you know, they were kind of the nadir of the series, weren't they?
Yeah.
And it was because of that very imperative. It's because you had this thing at Capcom where, and they've actually said this in interviews since, like, oh, we were trying to go for the Call of Duty crowd.
Yes, you can.
And it's like,
it feels like Gears of War, the 6th one.
Right.
It's got that over-the-shoulder shooty, hide behind walls sort of thing.
And it's like, well, don't you understand that the people who like Call of Duty and who like Gears of War have Call of Duty and Gears of War?
Yes, yeah.
That will always do it better. And the people who like Resident Evil for its qualities don't like those games.
No.
You know, so you are alienating 2 potential demographics. You're not incorporating them. You're alienating them. Yeah.
You're not making either of them happy, are you? It's just annoying both.
It's just annoying both, and it's such a corporate thing to think, isn't it? Oh, we're going to get both demographics by doing a watered down version of both these franchises. Yeah. It's such a corporate way of thinking. I mean, fortunately, Capcom have learnt their lesson. That is so clear. That is so clear. I mean, more than that, they're one of the few like traditional video game companies that are they've turned it around.
Yes.
They've totally turned it around. They're doing market research. They're looking at what their player base want, and they're giving it to them. They're giving it to them full force, you know?
Yeah.
Which is great. It's great. I mean, I can only applaud them for that. But so many of these traditional companies, like Konami, I mean, Konami's just dead as a video game.
It really is, yeah.
It's dead in the water. The only good I can see coming out of Konami now is when it inevitably, it seems to me, decides to sell off its various franchises
and let someone else
let someone else have a go at it, because I guarantee regardless of what comes out of Konami now, another company will do it better.
Yeah, because someone else will have seen oh, why can't they do it? It's like we always say, why don't they remake Silent Hill? Someone else will buy the rights to that, and then they'll do just that.
Right.
You know, it'll be all the things that you've wanted them to do forever, but someone else will do it.
Well, it's a license to print money.
Yeah.
The Silent Hill franchise is a license to print money. People love it. People adore the Silent Hill franchise, even when it was getting pretty shit towards the end. You know, when you had the likes of Downpour and whatnot, which was pretty awful. It still has its fans, you know, they still love this franchise, and the promise of a new game in that franchise just drives people wild. They go nuts. Any tiny little bit of news that crops up on the internet, people go wild. It spreads like a virus, you know, because people love it. It's part of video game culture, and Konami, either that they don't understand that, or they just don't give a shit. I'm not sure which it is, or whether it's a little of column A, a little of column B, you know. Because they make
they just make strange decisions, don't they?
Strange is one way of putting it. Strange is one way. I mean, I don't know whether you've ever gone and looked for the interviews with people, like the anonymous interviews with ex-Konami employees, where they talk about how ridiculous their business practices are.
I haven't, but I can imagine.
It's incredible. It's stuff like new programmers coming in and being just immediately being given orders for what they have to do, but not being given any software, not being told where they have to go to do it. You know, stuff like that, and then being given hard deadlines for what they need to do, and it's like, well, you know, it's like, I haven't even found where I'm sitting yet. I haven't found my cubicle or anything, you know?
Yeah, that's ridiculous, yeah.
Just shit like that, just amazing crap like that, you know. Stuff that's almost finished being cancelled just like that because the board of directors decide they don't want to go down that direction anymore. Yeah, when all the money has been poured into it already, when they've already advertised the fucking product. Amazing corporate shenanigans, amazing stuff. But then again, I mean, as bizarre as it is to think, the video game industry in Japan is collapsing.
Yes.
It's collapsing in on itself. There's, you know, the last Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy VII.
Oh yeah.
That had so much money poured into it, and it involved so many different studios from around Japan, that if it failed, it would have taken the entire Japanese video game economy with it.
Wow, okay.
Right. Fortunately, it was really good. And fortunately, it was Final Fantasy VII. So
did it make it back then?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then some, you know. It sold so well. And it was good, you know. It was good. In fact, it was better than good. I mean, I played it through and I loved it. I loved Final Fantasy VII, the original one. I loved it to bits. So, the thought of a remake was very sort of, you know, I was sort of biting my nails, you know. And I know it had been troubled. It had problems when they were making it, you know. It changed direction a number of times. It had gone, like, bits of it had been farmed out to different studios, and that's usually the kiss of death.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Actually, it's a stunner.
That's good. That's a good result then, yeah.
They've really made a game that does feel like the original. It's got the same spirit, it's got the same soul, but it is massively updated, like, in every way.
Yeah.
In every way. Not just, like, the graphics and the gameplay, but the story as well. They've done stuff to the story that they maybe wanted to do with the original script, but couldn't because of technological limitations.
Sure, yeah.
You know? I mean, you know, bear in mind, Final Fantasy VII, the original one, PS1 game.
Yeah.
Flagship PS1 game.
Ago, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, God, have you ever gone back to look at it now?
Not the original, no. I actually think that era, PS1 and N64, holds up worse than the eras before it.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like the first venture into 3D, innit?
That's exactly it. That is, I mean, this is, I mean, I don't know about you, like, when the PS1 and Saturn and all that stuff were coming out, I didn't like it. I
thought it all looked a bit shit. Because you got these beautifully crisp games on, like, the Super Nintendo.
Yes.
That, yes, they were 2D, but they looked beautiful. And then you've got, look at this amazing game, and it's Tomb Raider, and it's this wanky, boxy-looking thing with these blurry tigers. And
I thought, I mean, I was a teenager. I was like 13, 14 when the PS1 came out, and I genuinely thought it was a flash in the pan. I genuinely thought, you know what, this 3D thing, it's going to come and it's going to go because these look shit.
Yeah, it is,
And that attitude, it's one that's been expressed by lots of different people on YouTube who are of the same age. A guy called Dave Bulmer who does lots of stuff. He's like a commentator on video game culture, really cool guy. He said exactly this, and he said he sort of rationalized it by saying this is because like we grew up through the 16-bit era and before that, so we saw the evolution of two-dimensional games to their apex, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So at the end of the Super Nintendo and Mega Drive eras, we were seeing like the very best that two-dimensional 16-bit graphics had to offer.
Yes.
Then we were also there for the transition to 3D.
So when back at the bottom again.
Right.
Yeah.
It all reverted back to when programmers didn't really know what they were doing in 3 dimensions, when games were a little bit janky and a little bit like not quite finished and not quite polished. It took for me, I played Tomb Raider and I got it eventually, like I understood, you know, I kind of got the appeal of it. But it took games like Resident Evil and Final Fantasy VII to show me that there is worth here, you know?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. It's you've got to find something that's worth the perseverance, haven't you?
Exactly. And, you know, you go back, I mean, the original Resident Evil is unplayable.
I bet it is, yeah.
It's friggin' unplayable. Those old tank controls, you know, where you pivot on the spot.
And the original PS1 remote didn't have a joystick on.
They didn't, no. It was not analog.
This is one of the greatest follies that Nintendo's ever done. Is that the idea of the thumb joystick, as in instead of a big joystick that you hold like an Atari, the idea of a little joystick that you use to the analog stick, they invented that for the Nintendo 64, but they didn't copyright it properly. So they copyrighted that specific version of the analog stick, but the idea as a broader thing they didn't, which then meant that PlayStation could make their own, which they did. They then added it to their controllers later after the N64 had come out, and then the PS2 had it and the Xbox and everyone has it. But if they had properly locked that down, how far behind Nintendo would everyone else have been?
Like, unbelievably. Because it's now just default, obviously.
But
you know, the analog.
Yeah, it is. Everyone has it. You can't imagine playing without it. But I do kind of wonder if that's intentional, because Nintendo have never really been one for the like ruthless business practice, have they? They're always quite.
Not in those terms,
aren't they, in that sort of way?
Yeah, a little bit. There's been one or two things, like Nintendo don't understand like internet culture for some reason. So there was a thing a few years back where they were DMCAing like Let's Players for playing Nintendo games because they didn't understand that like that's just the way video game culture is now.
Yes.
Like all of your advertising, all of the good video game companies, you know, the ones that understand, they harness YouTube. So they actually go to the YouTubers that play their games and they give them like new versions. They give them early access. Nintendo at that time didn't really know. So they were DMCAing a lot of YouTubers, and of course it caused a massive backlash against them. Obviously, you know.
Yeah.
Fortunately, again, they've cottoned on now and they've rectified that situation. But that caused a bit of damage to the company, you know, because they did have this ethos of being very friendly and very very in tune with their player base, you know.
Yes, that is something I've always liked about Nintendo, is that they don't try and catch up with what PlayStation and Microsoft are doing. They just do what they want to do, and it just pleases their fans.
And often they produce some great work. I mean, for me, one of my favourite consoles ever was the GameCube.
Oh, same here. Yeah, absolutely.
I just loved that console. It was a natty little thing. It wasn't as powerful as the Xbox or as the PS3, which would have been around at the time.
Oh, I think it was the PS2, but I think it had better graphics than the PS2.
Yeah.
But I don't think it didn't have the power that the Xbox did, for sure. Nah. It wasn't up there.
It was kind of like it was designed to please the fans of Nintendo franchises, wasn't it? You know. And honestly, I got it when I was at university just to play one game. I got it to play Metroid Prime.
Oh yeah.
Because I love those games. I again, going back to like the Super Nintendo, Super Metroid, the apex. I mean, for my money, probably one of the best games on that console, and easily one of the best games ever made. Super Metroid. I went back and played it recently, and often when you go back and play old games, it's sort of like, I can see the cracks in this. No, it's great. It's great. You could have made that game now and released it on the PS4 as like an indie 2D title.
Oh,
and
nice. So it's held up that well then. That's good.
It's so good. Everyone would have been like, this is great. This is an insanely good game. And to think it was on the SNES, it's completely unique. So the transition of that franchise to 3D was always going to be like nail-biting and difficult. Actually, when I remember playing it for the first time, Metroid Prime, the first 3D Metroid game, and somehow, I still don't know how they've done it. What they managed to do was take a two-dimensional, side-scrolling sort of platform adventure game and turn it into a first-person platform shooter and make it still feel like those original games.
That's difficult, isn't it? That's a bit of a leap to get right.
I don't know how they did it, but like you pick it up and play it and it's like, oh, this is Metroid. This feels like playing Super Metroid, but in like 3 dimensions. It's almost as though they've gone into the 2-dimensional world with a camera and filmed it. It's so weird. It's so weird. I mean, and those games, because the art style is so odd, it's so strange, they graphically stand up really well. Yes. They weren't going for hyper-realism with it. They weren't going for like...
That always makes a difference. I think when something's stylized, rather than trying to look real, I think it ages a lot better.
I think so too. Another really good example from the GameCube, like, I like the Zelda games, they're fine, but they're not really my favourite RPGs, I can take or leave them. But I bought, the Wind Waker.
Yes,
the shaded cell
cell shaded, didn't it? Yeah.
That is gorgeous.
Yeah.
And it's still gorgeous. If you go back and watch it playing now, the way it moves and the way the animation, because it's all these big, bold, blocky colours, these hyper-stylized characters.
Yeah, I remember that one.
It works so well. And when that came out, there was an uproar.
Yeah, because of the style of it, yeah.
People hated it. When they first saw the screenshots of it, the Nintendo fanboys went nuts. They hated it. They absolutely hated it until they played the game and realised that actually it's one of the best Zeldas out there.
Yes.
Yeah. And since then, it's become one of the most beloved, because it takes, like, that basic formula of your Zelda game where it's really simple. You go from one dungeon to another, you collect an item in that dungeon, you use that item
for the next one.
Right, to solve puzzles, to open up areas of the map, to kill certain bosses, and they give you other items, and it just goes on like that. But somehow, because there's this added element of you sailing, you control like the wind and the weather.
I remember that, sail across that sea,
Right, it's lovely. There's something really sweet and beautiful about it all, and it plays so well. It's a charming game. When games have charm?
Yeah.
They sort of like inveigle you in. They sort of like they reach out and they like take you by the hand. Yes. And they just take you into their world, and you're like, okay, I can see what's going on here. I'm being charmed,
Yeah.
That game has that in spades. It has it in
I remember it being a really good one.
Spades. I haven't played it for ages, for a long time, but I follow a lot of Let's Players who go back to it, and they all have the same reaction, which is, this is so much fun.
I always like the GameCube in general, just because it was focused so much on multiplayer, which at the time that I had that was something I did a lot of. So there'd be like 4 of us in the same living room, let's put a video game on, So the idea that there was a wealth of things that were catered just for that, which now it's really difficult to find games that do that are designed for 4 people to play in the same living room.
Oh, in the same room. That's really difficult because, of course, it's all online now,
Yeah, but like I don't play it like that. I don't. Well, not this year, but generally, I'll have friends come round and we'll put a game on and we'll play it together. So it's increasingly difficult to find new games where you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I used to, like, way back when there was, like, a period between, that null space between high school and university?
Yes.
Where you've got nothing to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, absolutely nothing. I got into, I built my first PC during that period, and I kind of got into like the PC gaming arena, as it were.
Yeah.
And at that time, you were getting stuff like online gaming was taking off back then. It was getting really popular. So you had stuff like, you know, Half-Life, you had TFC and all that stuff. I used to play Team Fortress Classic. I used to like that. I used to be part of a clan. And I used to play Diablo 2. Where you would meet up on a server with a mate or a group of mates, and you go dungeon delving. You know, you go out into the procedurally generated world. You'd fight monsters, you'd level up, and you'd go down into dungeons, and you'd kill monsters, and you'd get items. You'd share the loot, and then you go back to town and do it again, basically.
Yeah.
That was fun. I liked that. But what I noticed really early on was the fact that those games start to accrue cultures really quickly.
Yes.
You know, where there are all these like standards and procedures and protocols that are not parts of the game. They're just what people expect of you.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
And I'm
not
like,
sure I'd like that.
I'm not into that at all.
No.
I'm only here to play a game. I'm not interested like TFC, Team Fortress Classic. But it's loads of fun. It's loads of fun, but it lends itself to competitive play, you know? And I only want to have fun. I'm not interested in league tables or in like being the best sniper or whatever. I don't.
Do you know what annoys me when you see this stuff on videos where people are like, "Oh, if you play this game, if you stand in this corner of the map and you move to less of this pillar, then it's impossible for anyone to shoot you. So if you stand there for 45 minutes, you can." And I just think, how is this fun?
Right. What's the point?
How is this an enjoyable game? I don't see the point in it now.
Nor do I. I've no like. It's an alien psychology to me.
Yeah.
Where someone just wants to like
get
one over on people.
Yeah.
And in that instance, it's not even like. I mean, I can understand when it's a matter of skill. You know, I can sort of understand that. It's not. Again, it's still not part of like who I am or what I want. But I can kind of get when it's a skill-based thing. But when it's just luck, you've just happened to have found the blind spot or the bit of the map that the programmers haven't taken into consideration. What is the fucking point?
Yeah.
It's impotent. You know.
There's no enjoyment to that. There's no enjoyment to that at all.
There are certain types of online play I can get, like, I mean, going back to these old examples, but Dark Souls and Bloodborne. So when you play those games, they're generally always online. You're always on a server, basically.
Sure.
And if you allow it, you can summon other players in at particular points to help out with particularly difficult encounters or bosses. In some areas, if you allow it, then other players can be summoned in as enemies, and you can fight them.
I think I've seen that. Yeah,
yeah. There's like a boss in Dark Souls 2. He's called the Mirror Knight, and he's a big, like elaborate knight, and he's got this massive shield that's a mirror. And if anyone is waiting on the server to come in as an enemy, he can summon them in through his mirror. So you get to fight both them and the boss at the same time. It's good fun, you know. But it's only within those particular areas, and it's only if you allow it, if you want it to happen.
Sure.
So it's all controlled, you know?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that's fine.
That.
Yeah.
That's great fun. Also, if you're online, you can leave little messages for people. So you can leave little messages that say things like, "Oh, beware of drop" or something, you know. So you can actually warn people of enemies or of how to do things.
I think I've seen that, like tips and guidance for this is how I just died and that kind of thing. Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of them are really funny because you can't just type things in. You've got to. There's a very limited repertoire of phrases that you need to construct your message from. So one of the funniest ones you find is like there's a bit in Bloodborne very early on where you go down into these sewers and there's a massive tunnel and there's a giant like mutated pig thing at the end, and very often people put in front of that tunnel, "Beware of blobby thing."
Nice.
Which always makes me laugh, you know.
Yeah.
Always makes me laugh. There's often in the Dark Souls games, there's often like corpses strewn about, so they're like sort of like bent over balconies or something, and someone will put something like thrust attack here or something, you know, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, you know, they find creative ways to be funny, basically.
Yes.
I like that. I think that's fun. There's also this thing whereby if you die in a particular area, you often leave behind a ghost or a spectre.
Yes, I've seen that. I have definitely seen that, yeah, Yeah, where it's like shows you how you died, so you can see the previous traveller that came here.
Yeah,
this is what happened to him.
It's fun. That kind of online play I really like. I really like that, where it's cooperative. It's all the control is up to you. But it's also in universe as well. So there's like this entire sub mythology in the games about like how there are multiple different realities and universes where the same stories are playing out, and that's what you're seeing.
Yes.
When you summon another player into your world, you're summoning them from another reality, you know?
Yeah.
It's cool, isn't it? It's fun. I like that, you know? But when it's I don't like the hyper-competitive games. I just cannot get on with them. I don't like the cultures that come up in those games. The kinds of players they tend to attract are arseholes for the most part.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know? They're just unpleasant people. They're often people who take it... For me, it's the taking it way too seriously.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely that.
I can't get over the fact that ultimately it's a video game, and I'm just not that invested, you know?
It's meant to be fun. You're meant to be doing this for fun.
Right, I do not care about, like... I mean, don't get me wrong, in games where there is a skill level involved and you achieve something, I like, you know, the feeling is good. I get that totally. It's fun to feel like you've achieved something. But even within that remit, it is still just a video game.
Yeah, of course it is, yeah.
It's still just a video game. It is not that big an accomplishment, you know?
No.
I mean, there is... I mean, you would have thought that games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, which are really hyper-hard, would have attracted, like, the worst of the worst, wouldn't you? You know?
You think so? This is the competitiveness, yeah.
I have found, instead, it's the opposite. The people who play Bloodborne and Dark Souls generally are a really fun lot. They're funny, they're helpful. There's this whole weird etiquette that's come up as well, which is kind of what we were talking about before, but it's fun, it's nice. Like, for example, in Bloodborne, if you summon, or if, like, someone comes into your world as an antagonist, before you attack one another, there's this whole etiquette where you're supposed to bow to one another.
Right, okay.
It's not part of the game.
It's just what has happened now.
It's what people do.
Yeah.
It's what people do. It's kind of sweet, you know. There's also this thing whereby if, like, an enemy starts attacking you while you're in the duel, you stop and you fight the enemy together before you resume the duel.
I like that. Yeah, that's nice.
It's not true in Bloodborne, but in Dark Souls, where you heal yourself by these things called Estus flasks, you have a limited number of Estus flasks, yeah? Before you fight a duel with another player, you empty them.
Okay.
You drink them all, so you've each only got one life bar.
Yes.
And that's it. There's no, like, sneaky healing or anything.
No, that's good. So
it's cool. It's fun. I like that. And if if you don't like that, you just turn it off.
You don't have to have the online feature at all. Yeah.
Nope, you don't have to have it. There's this whole thing where it's called what is it called? Embering. It's called embering, where your character can absorb these particular items that transfigure him into a slightly more powerful version of himself. And when you're embered, you're online, basically. When you're embered, other characters can come in and fight you or aid you, depending on what you want. So you just don't take the ember.
Yes.
That's it. That's basically it. It's fun. It's nice. I like that kind of online play.
That's nice. That's a nice way of doing it. I just can't be doing with the hyper-competitive people shouting and swearing at each other, taking it really seriously.
Also, there's this horrible, horrible tendency for the kinds of people who like those games. It's not universally true, but you know, the really negative video game and online cultures, like your misogynists, your white supremacists.
Yeah.
They're so into that shit. They're so into that shit, and I just can't be doing with it. I choose not to engage with that nonsense.
Yes, I would agree.
But they are everywhere on those forums and in those arenas. They are everywhere. The morons who don't like women playing video games, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, fuck off, you little pathetic neckbeard. You know, it's my attitude to that whole thing is, you know what? If you don't want the stereotype of, like, the virgin neckbeard, you know, can't talk to it, don't live up to it, you know?
Yeah.
If you don't want it to exist, stop acting like it, all right?
Yeah, that's perfectly valid,
That's my attitude to the whole thing. It's like, bloody hell, I'm gay, and I've probably had more experience with women than you. It's ridiculous. It is so ridiculous. The degrees of misogyny and racism, and that's where the whole Gamergate culture came from. Where they were basically sending death threats and threats of rape to women game journalists and women game players and whatnot. It's absurd.
I don't know how you could take something so seriously that you care who's doing it.
Right.
Why? I don't understand why. That looks like a game I'd like to play, and then you discover that the person who's made it is a woman, and why does that matter? Who gives a shit? I'm not bothered. I don't care what race, gender, sexuality. I'm just bothered about the game. It doesn't matter to me who develops it.
Or there is this wonderful thing happening in gaming at the moment where there is just more representation. There's just like a broadening of the field. So yes, you do get games now that cater to trans issues and to LGBTQ issues and whatnot, and that's fine. What's the fucking problem? It's not like you're being excluded or anything. It's just that an arena that was previously closed off and exclusive to particular demographics has now been broadened. So that it's talking to different people now. That's all.
Yeah, it's a game that's very much focused on the idea of the character's experience as a trans person or something, and you as a straight male think, I don't fancy that. That's fine, don't buy it. You don't buy it. It's not for you. You don't have to. It's fine. Go and buy one of the many games where you play as a straight white person. If that's it doesn't matter. You don't have to buy that one. It's not taking anything away from you.
Exactly that. No one's forcing you to play it, are they?
No
one's forcing you to play it. The Last of Us, the new one, The Last of Us 2, got a lot of this because, of course, Ellie is a gay, she's a lesbian character. There is also a trans character in this game, and quite frankly, if you couldn't see that coming from the first game and the issues it dealt with, then I don't know what you were playing.
No.
I don't know where you come from. The backlash that game got for it, just acknowledging the fact that trans people exist.
But it wasn't a big part of it, though.
No.
It's just like you meet the whole purpose of the character. Ignoring, I mean, Elle being a lesbian is completely irrelevant to the game.
Right.
Her partner on that game could have been a boyfriend, and nothing would have changed.
Right.
It was completely irrelevant that she just happened to be gay. And the trans character, the whole purpose of that character was that it was a cult member who, the entire game you'd been shooting against this cult as like faceless people, but then you actually meet one of them, discover that a lot of them are actually victims because they're so young, they've been brainwashed into this cult and they don't know any better. And you meet one of them and rescue them and end up working with one of them, and it just happens to be a trans person.
Right, yeah. It
doesn't matter that it's not, it's not as if it's like thrown it in my face or anything like that. No. It's like, no, this just happens to be a trans character. It
just happens to acknowledge the fact that trans people exist.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
all,
Yes.
That's all. And the real fact of the matter is when they say stuff like that, they're acting in bad faith. They just don't like the fact that media even acknowledges that LGBTQ people exist at all. They just don't want it, They want it to be their sandpit. It's a temper tantrum.
Yeah,
it's an infantile temper tantrum. Whenever I hear that or see that, what I see is a spoiled brat. I see a wow, this is my sandpit, throwing a breathless temper tantrum. That's what I see. It's pathetic.
What I liked about Last of Us 2 is I liked how it changes your opinion of the main character.
Right. Oh my gosh, she's brutal, isn't she?
No, but I mean,
there's some moments
you play through and it's like, Ella's a good guy, Ellie's a good guy, Ellie's a good guy, and then it swaps around and you kind of think, I'm not sure about this now.
Not so sure. Yeah. It's this whole play of morality, isn't it? Where it's giving
cleverly done. Yeah.
It's giving you this desperate world where morality, by its very nature, has been upended because of the survivalist imperative.
I think I ended up siding with Abby, to be honest. I ended up leaning more towards. I mean, her dad is a guy who's working on a cure for this virus that's affected the whole world. He comes up with it, and then this guy comes in and fucking murders him, and everyone else that he's worked with. I mean, you cannot blame her response to that.
Right, yeah. I liked the fact that it upended the morality and the fact that it upended like players' expectations of what the story was going to be.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of time for that. But not a lot of people do. I mean, I think, often, Lex, one of the problems, like, not to get too sort of elitist about it, but like when you are a storyteller and you understand how stories work on a very kind of mechanical level, you understand like the nuts and bolts of them. I do sometimes find that you tend to like appreciate stories in a way that most people who don't operate on that level of intimacy with stories don't.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
A lot of people don't want those challenges from their stories. They want the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, because the advert for that game made it seem like a straight-up revenge thing, didn't it?
Right.
Ellie's found out someone's killed Joel. She goes after the person who killed him and tracks across this post-apocalyptic wasteland as you did in the first game. But this time you're hunting down this person who killed Joel, and that's what you think the story's going to be. And for the first half of the game, it is that simple. But then it suddenly switches. And you're forced to play as the person who, at that point, you think of as the quote-unquote bad guy. But then as it goes on, you realise that it's not actually that simple. And then you start looking at the things that you yourself did as Ellie and thinking, oh, I'm not sure that was okay.
But people, it's the reaction to those things that I find the most fascinating. It's the way people, like, they have that immediate visceral reaction but often misinterpret it. They don't understand how to handle it, so they, instead of appreciating that this story surprised them and that it gave them something that they didn't expect and that it's kind of changed their perspective somewhat, there is this immediate denialism and resistance to that, as though it's attacking them, especially if they are particularly attached to the media in question. You see it all the time with like Star Wars and stuff like that.
Yeah, this film didn't follow the route I thought it would when I've made up my own fan fiction for the last 30 years.
Right.
So therefore it's bad.
Right, exactly that. This didn't. It's that feeling of ownership over the franchise, and you know what? My attitude to that is, I'm sorry, you didn't write it, you don't own it.
No, you might not like, well, that's what happened, but that's what happened. I personally quite like the new Star Wars films, and I quite like the journey they took.
Do you know the one that people really hate, The Last Jedi, and people fucking hate it? I liked it. I'm not like a big Star Wars fan in the first place, so maybe that's an element.
You know what? I thought that because I like Star Wars. I've watched all the films multiple times. I've played games. I had the toys as a kid, but I'm not into it the same way I'm into superheroes or horror stuff. It's just
same here.
Something else that I've watched. I've enjoyed it, but it's not a massive deal for me. I wondered if maybe that's why I didn't see the problems that other people have with it.
I think that may be it, because I know a lot of people who are much more attached to the, more attached to the Star Wars universe, and they get really quite frothy about it, I liked what The Last Jedi did with the mythology. I liked the fact that, like, it was like, everything you think you know about the Jedi and about the Force and about how it works. No, actually, we're going to liberate this a little bit. We're gonna turn this on its head a little bit, so it's not quite as simple as light and dark. It's not quite as simple as, oh, you have to be of this particular lineage to experience what the Force is. And you know what? The Jedi, they ain't always right. Even the one that you consider to be the greatest of them, Luke Skywalker. I loved what it did with Luke Skywalker.
I thought Luke's story was great. He's so terrified of becoming his dad that he has this flash of his nephew might be a bit too much like his granddad, and he panics and goes to kill him, and then he realises, fucking hell, I'm turning into my dad.
Exactly.
And then he runs off and isolates himself. That's a brilliant bit of character development, and it's so telegraphed because of course Luke could be scared of that. His dad was like the most powerful dark Jedi in the history of that galaxy. Of course that would be on his mind all the time.
Like, what if I, I mean, of course he would be a tortured character. Of course he would be. He would be thinking all the time, like, so that lineage, I was born of that lineage, man. I and also, not only that, I'm kind of like the cipher for it, I liked that so much. I liked that so much.
I liked that.
And the way the film was so aware of what its audience wanted and then said, we're not going to give it to you.
Yeah.
Sometimes the audience don't know what's good for them.
I liked the thing that pissed off a lot of people because it speaks very much to my thought process. I liked the fact that they had the character Poe Dameron, who's meant to be like the new Han Solo sort of thing. And he's coming on with his, we'll go for one last blaze of glory, we'll do this heroic thing, blah, blah, blah. And the general's like, we're fucking not.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. It's stupid. It's childish. You're not a little boy. We're going to do something sensible that guarantees all these civilians survive.
Right.
And everyone's like, you can't fucking... And I was like, actually, that's brilliant. Because it's just like, no, sit the fuck down and grow up, okay?
Yeah,
it's such a...
It's actually like, it's attacking a beloved archetype of those films, isn't it? And it's basically, you know what it's doing, and this is why I loved it, this is why I enjoyed it so much as a Star Wars film. It's basically kind of very subtly saying to its audience, you know what, it's maybe time to grow up a bit. Maybe these films from the 1970s were not as great as you think they were.
Well, it's also just like casting doubt on things that, like, you know, that character, like Han Solo, in reality, probably got everybody killed.
Right, exactly that.
He doesn't know what he's doing.
Because he's kind of like an infantile power fantasy, isn't he? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this new film acknowledges. I mean, I had issues with the one that came after the, what was it called? The
Rise of Skywalker.
The Rise of Skywalker. The reason I had issues with it is because I think the filmmakers got cold feet after the negative reaction to The Last Jedi. I think that they saw the way some portions of the fandom reacted, and they just went for like the more classic Star Wars with that one. Yeah. And I also really dislike the way they try to apologise for everything in The Last Jedi. So, like, in The Last Jedi, you've got this whole theme of Rey from nowhere.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a backstory, and she doesn't need it to be a character, you know. There doesn't have to be a reason why she knows how to use the Force and all of that, you know. That's what this makes explicit. But in the next film, they apologise for that. So she's the daughter of a clone of Palpatine. Okay, fine. You know, the granddaughter of a clone of Palpatine. Okay, fine. You know, and also bringing Palpatine back was bullshit.
Yeah, there was no way that was the plan all along. Whatever they say, there's no way.
I'm really sorry. That was total bullshit. It's pandering. It's pandering is what it is. And you know what? As a Star Wars fan, you should feel insulted by stuff like that, because it's like they're patting you on the head, you know, and consoling you. Now, that's what I react against in any kind of storytelling. You know, when you're being condescended to.
Yes.
You're being treated as more stupid than the writer or than the director or whatever. It's like, no, I don't want that. I want to be treated as though I'm an imaginative entity that has a mind to make up, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I did enjoy some aspects of that film, I must admit, but...
Yeah, some things were great, you know, some things were fine. I think it did, like... You know what Star Wars does when it's at its best? When it's just like space opera, and it's grand, and it's big, and... Fine, it did all that really, really well. It did that very, very well indeed. It's just the story elements. I was like, will you please stop apologising for the last film?
Yes. Yeah, there was a lot. It did do that a lot. It really
and you know what? Let the butthurt fanboys be butthurt fanboys. I'm really sorry. Just let them see.
Yeah.
Just, you know what? Some of these fandoms, they kind of need to get that.
Yeah, because I don't see why you would think that something... How did they want it to carry on? Why would they think that in the 30... Bear in mind they did this in real time. So there is actually like 30 years from Return of the Jedi to Force Awakens. Why would they think that these characters had done nothing but live happily ever after and it's just the same? Why would they think that Han Solo had moved in with Leia and they'd had a kid and they just lived happily ever after? The last 5 minutes of Return of the Jedi with the big celebration, the fireworks, why would they think it had been nothing but that for 30 years?
Right, I mean...
When you get the next film, it's exactly as you left it. Why would you think that? What kind of a story is that?
I mean, for one thing, I mean, you have to bear in mind, at the end of the Return of the Jedi, they've only killed the Emperor.
Yeah.
They haven't dismantled the machinery of the Empire.
No.
Which is an intergalactic tyrannical regime.
Yeah. Have you watched The Mandalorian?
I haven't yet,
Oh,
but
it's
I've heard
so
a lot
good.
about it.
So good.
I've heard it's good.
That picks up this idea that there's a lot of elements of the Empire still about.
Right,
And
right.
the main, this isn't a spoiler, this is in the synopsis, but the main crux of the story is that one of these groups of Empire, fragments is headed by this guy who isn't a Sith.
Right.
He wants to be.
Oh, okay, that's
and
interesting.
He hires a bounty hunter to deliver him this package, which he believes will help him with that. And
right.
the package
Is that Werner Herzog's character?
He plays Moff Sidious. I'm not sure the actor's name. He's a black guy with like a...
not then. No. Werner Herzog is the German guy, the film director.
Okay.
I've seen the clips with him because I just wanted... when I heard Werner Herzog was in this, I was like, well, I've got to see those sequences.
I think I know who he is in the series, but he's not the main bad guy, no. But he's this guy, Moff Sidious, he's got a black lightsaber, which looks really cool.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
But, yeah, he isn't actually a Force sensitive, but he wants to be. So he hires this bounty hunter, the Mandalorian, to deliver him this package, which he thinks will help with that goal. Right. And the package turns out to be this baby, the Baby Yoda thing.
The Yoda thing,
who's massively powerful with the Force already. And what he wants to do, this is kind of a callback to the older films, really, is he wants to basically cut this child open and figure out how it works.
I see.
How does it have the Force, and what can I do to sort of simulate that in me? But the bounty hunter realizes that this is what he's going to do, and even though their credo is that they're not supposed to question anything, they're not supposed to, they're just supposed to do the job and leave, he can't in all conscience do that. So he takes the child and goes on the run with it. So then this Empire group is after him, and the various other bounty hunters are after him for breaking the code, and it's almost like a space western movie.
Got you. Yeah,
it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
I mean, I've heard even people who don't like Star Wars like this.
Yes, it's so good. It just feels like you could so easily do this as a western, right? If you change the character of the Mandalorian into just a cowboy,
right,
a gunslinger, and have the baby as some magical Indian child, and then have the Empire is some rich landowner who wants that kid for whatever.
Right,
it's exactly the same story, and it could be set in the Wild West, travelling across the Nevada desert instead of space. It's exactly that. It just happens to be in space.
So it has almost like the feeling of almost like a spaghetti western.
It really does. It really does. It just happens to be in space and on speeder bikes instead of horses, and
kind of like that.
Yeah, but
kind of like that.
It's so good, and the acting and everything about it is just brilliant. It's like it's exactly what I wanted it to be, which is like it's something set in the Star Wars universe, but it doesn't have any of the characters in it. It's not directly linked to it. Lando Calrissian is not just going to pop up and go, "Hello, remember me from films?" There's none of that. It's just set in that galaxy.
Those stories are always going to be the best ones, aren't they? Because they're not bound. The writers can kind of go off at their own tangent. They can do what they like within the remit of that universe. It's like, did you ever when the Lord of the Rings films came out, there are all these companies, video game companies, that were trying to produce video games to tie in with them, and they were loathsome for the most part, those video games, because they struggled so much to try and fit the story in around the quest of the ring.
Yeah.
So there was one for I think it was for the PS2 or PS3, where you play a team of a man of Gondor, an elf, and a dwarf.
Yes.
And you are always just 3 steps behind the Fellowship.
Yes, I remember that one.
That's the way they tried to do it, and they tried to very synthetically insert you into the story around the Fellowship. It's so stupid. It doesn't make any sense at all, and it feels so forced.
Yeah. It's like you've got a whole world here. There's other stuff happened before the War of the Ring. There's other stuff going to happen after it. You don't have to. I like the most recent one, the Shadow of Mordor one.
Oh, the Shadow of Mordor, where it turns
out he's actually one of the Nazgul. That was good.
That was
I like
interesting.
that.
Yeah. Because the Nazgul all they're described as it by Tolkien is that they were kings of men, that they were great sorcerers.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's all you know. That's all
you really know. You know that they were given rings of power by Sauron, and that the rings corrupted them and distorted
But
their
it didn't
spirits.
say it was all at the same time.
No.
So it certainly allows for this guy to be like the last of them, if you like,
Absolutely,
the most recent
yeah.
one.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, there are 3 that are named in the books. There are 3. There's one that's an Easterling by the name of Carmul. There's one named Gothmog, and there's the Witch King.
The Witch King himself, yeah.
And that's pretty much it. That's all you know. That's all she wrote, There's a lot of space for storytelling. Yeah. There's a lot of space for storytelling there.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like, I kind of like the notion of expanding these universes, as long as it's done respectfully, But these video games, man, because these characters are following the Fellowship, they can't really do anything.
No, because they can't do anything that's going to affect the story.
Exactly.
Because that's already set in stone, so...
Exactly. And the fact, because they were movie tie-ins, they had to have some fidelity. They couldn't alter the way the story was going. It had to be down the line. So every 2 seconds you were getting these like synthetic roadblocks.
Yeah.
Where the characters have to just stop here. They have to just stop here. I mean, some of the most forced moments are like, for reasons, they end up like, the bridge of Khazad-dûm, where Gandalf is facing off against the Balrog.
Oh yeah.
They end up, and this makes no sense at all, they end up behind the Balrog. Right, and you have to fight the back of the Balrog.
Oh god.
Right, isn't that crap? That's that
ridiculous.
Just like, it's so forced. It's so ridiculous. I mean, at least Games Workshop got like the franchise for miniature games based on the films, right?
Yeah.
And the way they worked it was almost like a fantasy football kind of thing. So they made it so what if you were able to
do it different storylines? Right. Yeah.
So what if you started in Rivendell and you could make your own fantasy football team of the 9 Walkers of the Fellowship?
Cool.
I mean, how much fun would that be?
I haven't watched them films for ages, but they're so good. The Lord of the Rings films.
They are.
They're
amazing.
Like perfect cinema, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
I remember sitting in cinema. It's a strange thought to remember, but I remember going to the cinema with my dad and my granddad, and we watched all 3 of them. I remember watching the first one, and there's that scene where you get Balrog fighting Gandalf, and then Gandalf dies. And then they go out, and it goes really slow, and you've got action stuff going on still, but the music goes really sad. And then they go out, and they're all devastated, and then Aragorn's like, "We've got to go, it's going to get dark." And Boromir's like, "Can you just give him a minute, for fuck's sake?"
Yeah.
And I just remember sitting there thinking, cinema don't get any better than this.
No,
just the emotion of this and the drama and the acting. It's so. Right. I mean, Sean Bean is amazing in that film.
Yeah,
he's absolutely. You just think this is brilliant. This could not be any better than it is.
I mean, I was on like the tail end of my A levels when those films came out, so I was still like a die-hard Tolkienite back then. I was still like well into the Lord of the Rings, so I was so frightened for those films. I was so like I prepared myself. I was sort of like, these are not going to be any good. They're not going to be like, they're not going to please you. They can't. They can't be what you want them to be. And I found like the little moments, like when Gandalf drives up to Bag End on his cart, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's like Peter Jackson and his team did this weird thing where it's like they created the quintessential Bag End.
Yes.
The quintessential Gandalf, the quintessential Balrog. And I was like, I can't believe, my reaction to it was very emotional. I was like, I can't believe they've done this.
Yeah.
I was incredulous.
Now, you picture the stuff that's in the film.
Right. Yeah. I was incredulous. I was like, this cannot be as good as I'm feeling it to be,
Yeah.
But every time I watch those films, every single time I get the same reaction.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's often little things like one of the moments that just got me so much, I was crying in the cinema. It was so ridiculous. In the third film, when Gandalf and Pippin ride up to Minas Tirith and you see it for the first time, the camera rises and you see Minas Tirith.
Yeah.
and it's like it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. It's
yeah,
like
it's such a brilliant. Yeah, the imagery of it.
That is how Tolkien described it.
Yeah.
It's perfect. They've missed nothing. Not a detail, not a stone is out of place. And I was like, this is so respectful. They've taken Tolkien's work and they've captured like the essence of it and made something so pure and so perfect. I can't get over how good they are.
Yeah, they are brilliant films.
They're some of those films that I do watch every year, once a year, you know?
Yeah.
And every time they get me. The Hobbit is not the same. The Hobbit has got a lot of problems.
Yeah, it does. It really does,
but
yeah.
The Lord of the Rings films, I can't picture any other actors playing the roles they do.
No, they're all perfect, aren't they? There's no one who's bad. There's no one who you think, oh, he's a bit wooden, or everyone's just perfect.
Everyone is fantastic. The lines are beautiful. Like the things that they've improved are improvements.
Yeah.
You know, the things they've cut, I can totally understand. Like, you know, I know some like Tolkien purists who don't like the fact that Glorfindel isn't in it. Well, the reason Glorfindel isn't in it is because he turns up one moment out of nowhere, is in it for like a chapter, and then goes away again.
Yeah, there's no need for that in the film.
No, it doesn't make any sense for him to be in the film. You know, there's no reason for him to. And also from like a purely practical like perspective, like people going to see this film, they're watching the scene and they're like, what? This elf lord turns up, does something, then goes away again without explanation. They're like, well, what was that?
Yeah.
You know, it wouldn't make any sense. Replacing him with Arwen actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because you've got there's someone already. That's why I think about the Watchmen film as well. It makes more sense to have Dr. Manhattan as the threat rather than a big squid thing, because he's already there. He's already set up. You've already established that there is a superpowered threat in this world that all the world is scared of.
Right.
So if Adrian Veidt is wanting a threat to unite the East and West, you've got it there. It's already ready-made.
Right. Yeah, you don't need to add in something else, do you? It over-eggs the pudding, doesn't it, you know?
You've already got it. Use Dr. Manhattan. And I thought that was an improvement. I know that's people think that's like a Philistine thing to say.
There are some people, I guarantee there are people out there now, actually, who are listening to this who are sort of like, you know, they're going to the comments section already, Lex, I'm telling you. They're going to the comments section already, where, you know, they're ready. They're ready to type out their counter-argument. But no, it's often true. I mean, I don't buy. There is often, you know, amongst book cultures, there is often the sort of the assumption that the book is always better. It's just not true.
No,
it's just not true. It depends.
No, because sometimes it's like a second go at it.
Right.
I think that's something that's very true with the Marvel movies. Is a lot of stuff they've changed is better.
Right.
Because it's like you look back at it and think, oh, if we'd have done that now, we'd have done this a bit better. And the films are a way of doing that. Like I am a staunch defender of the way they've done Spider-Man. I think having him get all this stuff from Tony Stark just makes so much more sense. I don't care how smart he is. I'm not willing to believe that a 15-year-old can make a suit like that in his bedroom.
No.
Where's he getting the equipment? Where's he getting the equipment? Never mind how smart he is. Where's he getting it?
Yeah, that has always been an issue for the Spider-Man mythos, isn't it? Yeah. How did this kid design the web shooters, you know? And
the suit with the eyes that adjust and the lenses. It's like, I'm sorry, just saying that Tony Stark gave it to him, that just it answers that better. It just explains it.
Even the Sam Raimi films made more sense, where it's just part of his mutation.
Yeah, the webs. Yeah, totally fine. Cover that. Yeah,
totally get that. That makes a load more sense than him cobbling together the web shooters from household items.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, doing stuff that like people at CERN can't do in his bedroom.
Yeah.
You know,
I never understand that. It's a Stan Lee villain thing. You get this villain who's like apparently a fucking moron, and yet he designs a battle suit that makes him capable of fighting like the entire police force of New York. And you think, wait, I thought this guy was supposed to be an idiot, and yet how has he made this?
Right, doesn't quite fit, does it? You know, no. It's like, I mean, for me, one of the big ones is The Shining.
Yeah.
The Shining. Now, I know, again, there's probably people who are already going to their keyboard on this one. But The Shining is just one of those early Stephen King books that I don't like. I don't get on with it. It just doesn't do anything for me. I'm not the biggest fan of early Stephen King. You know, the stuff that people really like, that he made his reputation on. I think he's got better as he's got older. I really do. I think he's actually gotten to be a much better writer as he's gotten older. I prefer his more experimental stuff when he's going a bit wild, you know, when he's going a bit off-piste. I think what Kubrick did with The Shining is far more successful.
Yeah, I think it adds some iconic stuff to it, which again, when you think of The Shining now, you think of that, don't you? That's
you think
kind
of the film, don't you? Yeah. Like the ending, for example. Now, spoilers, by the way, guys. The ending of the book, the hotel gets blown up.
Yes.
So the Jack forgets to dump the boiler. So every day he's got to dump the boiler pressure, because if it goes too high, it will explode. It will blow up the hotel, which is a really silly thing anyway. I'm really sorry, it's a silly concept. There's no like, even in the 1980s you wouldn't have gotten away with that. You know, it's kind of a silly concept. And the notion of ending with the hotel exploding feels wrong to me. It feels kind of like a synthetic ending, you know?
It's a very old school, boom, it's ended, the Death Star's blown up, sort of.
It's very 1980s, isn't it? It's very 1980s. Whereas the ending of the film is beautiful. That weird kind of ambiguous... What is actually happening? You know, where you see the photograph from ages ago and Jack is in it.
Yes.
What does that signify? Does that signify that somehow he was always here?
I think it's that thing with ghosts and time travel. Time doesn't flow properly if you're ghosts. So
exactly.
As soon as you're dead, have you been dead 5 minutes, 1,000 years? It doesn't matter.
Exactly. That's exactly it. But I love the fact it doesn't explain it.
No, it doesn't
belabor
it. It doesn't need to. You know? No. But I like the fact that the ghosts in there are just dicks for the sake of it. It's like, we're dead, we're bored, every time some family comes here, we're going to fuck with them.
Well, it's like, I mean, one of the things the film does really successfully, and actually the book does this successfully as well, is that it emphasises that even, like, it's not even the ghosts as such, it's like, because of all the crap that's happened...
Yeah, the place is an evil place,
Yeah, it's like, it's steeped in malevolence, isn't it? I mean, that's a very old-fashioned horror concept. That goes way back to Edgar Allan Poe, and before that even, you know? But I love that, and I think it's handled very well. It's like it acts as a magnifier for negativity, doesn't it? So all of the bad stuff that's swirling around in your subconscious, it will magnify and it will emphasize and it will throw back at you. I kind of love that.
Yeah, the ghosts, it's almost like the hotel is a rotten room and the ghosts are like fungus that's growing out of it. Exactly. Because you've got the rot, you get the fungus growths going out of it.
Exactly, yeah. They may not even be like ghosts in the classic sense, you know?
No, they might be sort of like a manifestation of some of the people who've been there, but not necessarily a singular conscious entity.
Right, there's almost like a Lovecraftian thing going on, isn't there? Like as though the geometries of the hotel somehow magnify emotion, and it's the Hill House thing, isn't it? You know, it's Shirley Jackson. It's this notion that there are places that are so designed, or because of the things that happen in them, they take on a personality. They take on a kind of sentience almost.
Yeah,
I love that. I kind of love that. It's old-fashioned, you know. It's an old-fashioned horror concept. It's been around for probably as long as there have been horror stories, you know.
Oh yeah, just the bad place idea.
The place that is just elementally bad.
Yeah.
And I suppose that may come from human experience, because we've all been to those places, haven't we? You know, where you get a vibe.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, we've discussed this. Neither of us believe in like the sort of metaphysical or supernatural elements of this, but that doesn't have to be part of it, does it? I mean,
no.
There's I may have mentioned this to you before, but I wish I could remember his name. There was a British psychologist, an audiologist rather, who did some studies a few years back where he went around. His speciality was audio psychology, so he explored the effects of ambient sound on human psychology, right, and human mental states. So his shtick was that he went around to all of the purportedly most haunted locations in the UK, and he took readings of various different levels of sound.
Okay.
And what he found was, in those areas where there are the most reportings of phenomena, whether they are feelings, whether they are manifestations, whether they are sounds, whatever, there is this very particular pitch of sound that occurs. And it can be caused by lots of things. It can be caused by atmospherics. It can be caused by, like, underground tectonic movement, by underground rivers. It can just be caused by, like, the natural ambience of architecture. This sound at particular pitches naturally evokes in human beings a sense of preternatural dread.
Yeah.
And it can create paranoia. It can create it at particular pitches. It can even affect your mental state to the point whereby you feel overwhelmed and you feel oppressed and you feel as though there's something there, you know? It can even cause hallucinations.
There was a game that had it in and then it got withdrawn. I remember it on the PS3.
Oh, really?
There was a game, Japanese horror game called Blood Siren.
Oh, and it actually had this sound.
And it had that on it because I remember playing it and feeling agitated and like wary, and I don't get that feeling from horror video games. You know, like that where you need to go for a pace in the middle of it and then you don't go upstairs, that kind of thing. And I remember thinking, where's that come from? Why do I feel like that? I haven't felt like that since I was about 8 years old.
That's clever, isn't it?
And then I remember reading, not long after I finished the game, I remember hearing that it had been withdrawn from the shops. And I read that it was because it features all of that kind of thing in it, but they hadn't announced anywhere on the box, and they're supposed to put some kind of a warning, same as like with epilepsy, you're supposed to put if there's flashing lights and all that kind of thing.
Totally.
And they're supposed to put a thing on saying, look, this game features this type of sound which is known to cause agitation and anxiety, and they hadn't mentioned anywhere on the box.
That's naughty, isn't it? That's kind of naughty, because, like, you know, if you happen,
I might be wrong, but I'm sure that's what it was called. That's the one in my head.
I mean, if you happen to have, like, a pre-existing condition like schizophrenia or, like, you know, it could really agitate that.
Yeah, that could cause some problems,
It could cause some real problems, but that is, I mean, I find that fascinating, and it does explain why, you know, when sometimes you do go into places and you do get a vibe, don't you, where it's like, I just don't want to be here. There is, like, a feeling of dread or of something.
Yeah.
Whether that's, you know, sometimes it can be as simple as walking down like a lane that you've never been down before or something. It just gives you this sort of agitated feeling. And I mean, I seek that out. I kind of love it.
Yeah, I quite like it.
I like. Have you ever been on any ghost walks, Lex?
Yeah.
I've
done a few.
I love them. What I was doing before the bloody, you know, the what are they calling it online at the moment? The Backstreet Boys reunion tour. That's what they're calling the current pandemic. The Backstreet Boys reunion tour. They're calling it that because, like, if you call it COVID-19, YouTube, you know, the algorithm on YouTube, it will downvote your video.
Right, okay.
For reasons, you know, for reasons. So they're calling it euphemistically the Backstreet Boys reunion tour. Before that, I'd like every Halloween I'd go to Derby, because they do in Derby. You know Richard Felix from Most Haunted?
Yes.
You know, the historian.
The historian, yeah.
Yeah, he does like a ghost walk around Derby, and Derby's got loads of old locations. It's got like Derby Jail, it's got all sorts of places that are really atmospheric, and those are so much fun.
Yeah.
They're so much fun. You start in the Dolphin pub, which is like one of the oldest pubs in the UK, and it's all like, you can tell it's old because you know how people were just shorter.
Yes.
Once upon a time, they were just shorter.
The shorter doors and the roof. Yeah, you get that with a lot of places in York as well.
Like, the ceilings are really low, and like you have to duck to get in anywhere. It's so fun, and all the wood is warped as hell from like water damage. It's great. It's brilliant. You start in the cellars of the Dolphin, because they're purportedly supposed to be very haunted. There's supposed to be loads of ghosts. Apparently, Dick Turpin is supposed to haunt there.
Is it?
And all this nonsense, yeah. And of course, because you know you're in the Dolphin, so you've probably had a few drinks by the time you go down there. So you're already sort of like you're in a suggestible state anyway.
Yeah.
And everybody's feeding off of one another's energy. Everybody's a little bit kind of like jittery and nervous and fun. And then suddenly someone gets a water droplet down their back of their neck, or like a bit of wood creaks, and that's the end of it. It all goes to hell. I kind of love that stuff. I find it fun for the experience.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. It's. I'm not there because I believe it, but it's just enjoyable.
And on the off chance.
Yeah.
Just on the off chance, because I would dearly love to see something.
Yeah. I've said that before. I would.
Yeah,
but...
I would dearly love to see something, but the thing is, I want to see something definite.
Yeah, not something you can explain away.
Right. On these like paranormal investigation shows where they're like, oh, it's an orb, and then you get the slow motion bit of footage where it zooms in ominously on this what's clearly a bit of dust or a moth or something.
There's usually a fly in it.
Yeah, right. It circles it in red, and you get the ominous music coming. And it's like there's nothing there.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's not anything at all.
I mean, my God, if you're going to make something out of nothing, at least give me something that's worthy of my time and not a bloody... They were
filming up near the haunted road near where I live again at Halloween.
Oh, yes, with your the Spectre.
Yeah, they were filming. I don't know why. No one's done anything about that for ages, so I can only assume there's some new... sort of maybe a YouTube channel or something that does about ghosts in Yorkshire or something, I don't know, but yeah, they were a film crew up there at Halloween.
Interesting. You know what? We'll have to do that at some point. When this pandemic has ended, should we go and film somewhere scary and see if we can find something?
Oh God, it just feels being massively cynical about
I know, right? Wouldn't it be fun though? Wouldn't it be a laugh? I think that'd be great fun.
That would be quite funny. Get a bunch of horror author people in on it.
Right. I think that would be so much fun. Oh God, can you imagine if we captured something? The thing is, because we're all writers, no one would believe us.
No, they think you'd done it for the narrative, wouldn't they?
Yeah. No one would believe us. That's the thing. But I would love to see something. Oh my God, I would love to see something that really I would still be cynical because I know from... I hesitate, I don't want to incriminate myself, but I know from let's say certain experiences with certain substances that may or may not be illegal, that I may or may not have taken at certain points in my life. I know that the human perception and the human mind can be tricked.
Oh, he even says that in Christmas Carol book.
Right.
Scrooge talks about that. He says, Marley says to him, why do you doubt that you've seen me? And he says, because your senses can be so easily fooled. You eat a bit of bad food and you're haunted by goblins for the next 3 weeks.
There's more of gravy than of grave about you, one of my favourite lines in the whole thing.
He says it as a joke, but it's a valid point that he's raising, which is that totally your senses can get messed up quite easily.
Yeah, it would have to be really... I don't know in that regard what it would take to actually convince me that it was like a ghost or a demon or something.
It'd have to be a full-on, undeniable manifestation for me.
Yeah. Like something that physically affects the environment somehow, that moves things or something.
Yeah.
Like a poltergeist, that I would love to see.
But in a way that isn't explainable by a rusty door hinge that makes it tighten up. Because I used to have a door in my house where the door always just used to open of its own accord because the door hinge had rusted and that had made it a bit tight, and so it used to just... if the temperature cooled and the metal contracted, then so it couldn't be anything like an opening door. It would have to be something like you put something in the dead centre of a perfectly flat table and it's too heavy to be moved by a draft or something, and then it just flies off. Something like that, where there's no other way that it could have moved. Something like that.
It's so difficult, isn't it? Have you ever heard of the Death Valley rocks?
No, I don't think so.
Right. So Death Valley is like one of the most inhospitable places on the planet.
Yes.
It is like one of the driest places outside of certain areas in Antarctica where there hasn't been rainfall for millions of years, right?
Yeah.
And what they find, it's found consistently, there are rocks in Death Valley that have these long, winding trails after.
Oh, I have seen that. I can't remember the explanation, but yes, I have seen that.
It's electromagnetic, ultimately. Yeah. They find the rocks that move have these incredible amounts of iron ore in them. and there are these very strange electromagnetic fields in Death Valley that cause them to move.
Right.
That's what it is. So now, if you don't know anything about magnetism,
you think that was something weird, yeah?
You would be fucked up by that. You would think that there must be some supernatural phenomenon.
But that's not how my mind works. Just because I can't explain it, don't mean I think it's God and ghosts. You know,
no,
it's like if I got to see a magician and he's doing his magic, and you're like, oh, how did he do that? I don't know, but I don't just assume that he's a sorcerer.
Exactly that.
You know,
that's it, isn't it? You often get. I often find when I'm in discussion with people who do believe this stuff, is you get the begging the question. So they'll say, "Well, how do you explain that then?"
No,
well,
the burden is not on me to explain it.
The burden's not on me, and not only that, but almost any explanation you can give is more likely than it was a dead person.
But it's one. We did this in his ghost podcast, but it's one. It's the fact that you want it to be that. Because that means you might see your dead granny again or whatever. That's what it is, and that covers a lot of it.
Yeah, it is want, it's desire, yeah, and it's the fact that people identify so strongly with these stories, you know, that when you start to criticize or even just, you know, basically question them, you come off as though you're attacking them, you know, no matter how softly spoken it is.
Yeah, you're right. Now, speaking of ghosts in unexpected places, do you want to go on to his planned topic?
Well, actually, given that we've talked about this so much, I think maybe should we save that one? For should we save that one for the next one? Because we've actually gone on for like a couple of hours. So I think we should just go on with like whatever, you know, I think we should just carry on chatting, to be honest, man. And I'll release this as a podcast because it's gone on. We've done quite well, I think. I think we've done quite well here. Various different subjects. I'll call it a pick a mix.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Well, with regards to the haunted places, well, haunted inverted commas, I think there's a few things that affect that. And I think the kind of places that you've talked about, like where you're going there because you're going for a ghost night, you've got that immediate, everything you've been told about it is setting this up as it's a creepy place. Isn't it dark? Isn't it cold? Have you heard this story? Have you heard that story? Sometimes people feel someone touching the shoulder. Sometimes, so you've immediately got all this in your head, whether you believe it or not.
And the power of suggestion is so strong.
If you didn't have any of that, if you just spent the night in a hotel, right, that you were just spending the night in a hotel, and the morning after you'd stayed there, someone said to you, did you know that's the most haunted hotel in England, and you stayed in the room where it's all supposed to happen? I guarantee you would have experienced nothing the night before. But if he told you before you stayed there, you would be convinced that you might have felt something, or, you know?
Yeah.
That's
people underestimate.
I have two people staying in allegedly the most haunted hotel room in England. One of them tell them before they say that it is, and one of them don't, and see which of them reckons they've experienced something.
Yeah, it's a fair point. People underestimate the power of suggestion, and there are millions of psychological studies into just how powerful. It's not just psychological, but like sociological as well. Advertising, the entire arena of advertising is based on that power.
Of course it is, yeah.
And so many people will say, well, it doesn't work on me or whatever. It does. You don't realise that it's working on you because it's so subtle a lot of the time, but it does. It's informing so much of the way you think and the way you act and what you want, you know?
Yeah.
There's no like accident in the fact that you see like an advert for a Kit Kat at one point, and then like a few hours later you kind of fancy a Kit Kat, you know?
yeah. Another explanation sometimes for that kind of what do you call it, like a negative vibe that you get from a place, can also be from the experiences you've had there, if it's a place that you've been multiple times.
Like there's an associative thing going on, isn't there? So it doesn't even necessarily like have to be a place you've been. Maybe it just like subconsciously evokes a place that you've been.
Like if you went to Auschwitz, for instance, you're not going to feel any happy vibes, are you? Because of
absolutely not.
You know, but there's two places, one on each end of the spectrum for me, which have that kind of a feeling, even though I don't believe in quote vibes or anything like that. It's purely to do with association. One of them is negative, one of them is positive. So the negative one, there is a cafe in Sheffield which I went to about 5 years ago. First time I'd ever been in it. After I had, it was a very bad year for me mentally, and I, for one reason or another, which is not the time to go into that, but I was having a really depressive episode, and I just needed to stop walking about. I was in town. I just needed to sit somewhere before I threw myself under a bus or something. So I just needed to go somewhere. So I just found the nearest cafe and I sat there and I just ordered a cup of tea that I don't think I drank any of, and I just sat there while I tried to get my head back to some semblance of normality, and then left. Every time I walk past that cafe, I can almost feel the sadness coming off it. It's like, to visualize it, it's almost like there's a black fog hanging around that door. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like like that monster from Lost, the smoke monster. It's almost like that is around the door.
So it's like it's the temple of your despair, isn't it? It's like it's where you hit that particular nadir.
And I can't help feeling that if I went back in there, I would feel like that again because of that association. So I've never been in since.
No,
it's a lovely cafe. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying that, but it's just that association is so strong. I still feel that when I walk past it. Now, the other end of that spectrum is when every year, luckily enough this year as well, me and my partner Charlie and our two best friends, we go away for a week to Centre Parks, and every time we just have the four of us and we book a cabin in the woods and we do different activities and we take a stack of horror films to watch in the evening. So we watch horror films with the log fire on and all that kind of thing. And it's really relaxing. It's really fun. They're the same temperament as us, as friends who we go with. So everything's perfectly balanced. You don't have that thing with someone who needs to be go, go, go all the time and someone else who can't be bothered. We're all kind of the same level.
Yeah.
So it's just, there's been nothing but joy and relaxation from that place. And I remember a couple of years ago, Charlie went there with her mum, and I was joining them midweek for a couple of days because they had a week there and I only had a couple of days off. So I said, I'll come and meet you there for a couple of days. And I was massively stressed at work at that point. I remember pulling up in that car park in the middle of the week, and as soon as I got out of that car, it was like, it was like immediately, okay, I'm here now.
Like being able to breathe again.
But again, there's nothing. I don't believe in what people call good vibes or bad vibes or any of that stuff. But it's the association, because as with the cafe, nothing but bad feelings had ever occurred there. And the opposite at Centre Parks, it's been nothing but joyful times and relaxation. So it has that very strong association for it, which a lot of places don't get, because if you think about your own house, it's going to be, I mean, you'd hope that more than not it was a positive place, but nevertheless it will have had bad things happen in it.
Absolutely,
you will have been there when you got a phone call telling you a relative's died. You will have had you will have had rows with your partner there. You will have good and bad will have happened in your house, so it's going to be a mix of things. But some places will be nothing but bad things, and some places will be nothing but joy. And I think that association affects your emotion of it, even in a completely illogical way. Because, like I said, there is no logical reason for me to feel wary when I'm walking past a cafe.
No.
And yet, I do, because of that association of it.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think you're right. I think so much of what we call, vibes and whatnot derives from that. Well, I think this is a problem people often have when it comes to experiences that people would describe as being of like the paranormal or whatever, which is that they are internal, they're psychological more than anything. It's what you bring to the experience, and in that regard, I've got a lot of time for them. If you can acknowledge that and you can sort of appreciate that and take something away from it, then I've got a lot of time for them. Like, for example, I mean, I must have told you, I used to be, in my very younger days, I used to be a bit of an occultist, I used to like black magic and all that kind of thing. I used to like the rituals and whatnot. I never found a thing. I never found anything that works, associative magic. But what I found through my exploration of all those various and it's a big church, I'm telling you, there's a lot of stuff involved, is that a lot of it is not about, it's not about creating some external magical effect. It's not about like affecting reality around you. It's about affecting your own internal state. And that in turn allows you to affect reality around yourself.
Yeah.
So it's creating a much more positive mental state, or a more powerful mental state. And I find that a lot of the rituals associated with spells, with occult rituals, that kind of thing, that's the effects they have. There's something about them that evokes a very positive frame of mind, or a state of potency in your own mind. And that is what people mistake for magic.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense.
And in that regard, there is some worth to them. But you've got to be very careful, because there's a trap inherent, isn't there? The trap inherent is that you start defining this effect as magical.
Yeah, you start believing your own...
Right.
Yeah, you've created it, and now, oh, look what I've just done, it's magic, yeah.
Right. Believe me, if there were a devil or a demon, I'd have conjured it by now.
Yeah, sure.
I'd have found it by now, because well, you know, that's another thing I would dearly like to experience. If there are like other realms of being, I would like to engage with them somehow.
Sure.
Of course, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? So if there are demons and devils, then great. Wonderful. I want to see them. I want to know what they are. I want to see what they are, you know. But I hesitate to be so generalizing as to say they just aren't, because I don't think it's as simple as that. I think that things like demons and devils and angels and whatnot are actually, they're sort of principalities of the mind more than anything. They're things that occur within our abstract arena, within our abstract self, you know, and that doesn't make them any less real. It just means that they don't exist physically. It means that they exist within the mind, you know. They exist within the imagination, within the arena of imagination.
Well, that opens up a whole philosophical question of what is real. I mean, if you,
well, exactly,
you know what I mean? Yeah, it's like
exactly.
Yeah, what you mean by a demon? I mean, you can be absolutely tortured by your own brain and your own voice as an anxiety sufferer. I totally get that, but I don't think there's physically an actual demon from hell talking to me.
No, of course not.
You know,
you make your own demons.
Absolutely,
you make your own demons, and they are called depression, and they are called anxiety, and they are called paranoia. You know, that doesn't make them any less real. It just means that they are more of the psyche than of the metaphysical. In fact, I mean, it's an interesting thing. It's a sort of existential and philosophical conundrum, but I would have it that we operate more within abstract realms than we do within any notion of a consensual reality. And in that regard, yes, there is something to be said for proclaiming the things of the mind to be absolutely real, in the sense that, you know, if you do suffer with things like paranoia, with schizophrenia and whatnot, those things are very real to you. You know, they are parts of your world. You know. It's just when you start defining them as like objectively real or universally real, rather than as solipsistically real, as in they're just real to you.
Yes, yeah, and I think, I don't know, I wonder sometimes if it's easier to believe that it's an external thing. I mean,
that it's universal.
Yeah.
Well, in that regard, I suppose externalizing it makes it easier to control, doesn't it? Because if it's external and objective, it's not part of you, yeah? So you don't bear responsibility for it, you see, when it's external, which is why I think so many people are desperate for it to be so. It's why you get, I was watching some videos about this earlier, but, you get the constant argument from fundamentalists of all stripes that atheists and non-believers really do believe in God, they just don't want to acknowledge it, right?
Yeah.
You get that all the time.
Yeah.
And it's bullshit, it's bullshit. The reason they proclaim that is because they can't actually handle the notion that people don't.
No.
People just don't. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, because if you acknowledge that, then it might make you think about your own belief in it.
Exactly. And the fact that people can be totally informed in religion. I mean, the irony is, of course, a lot of atheists, particularly in the USA, a lot of non-believers, were really fundamentalist at one time.
Yes.
Really fundamentalist. Some of the strongest, non-believers, some of the most arch atheists were once very deeply in those cultures.
I think it's if you push too far, though. I mean, people who are just casual believers in a vague sort of Christian belief or whatever, I don't think they're likely to just abandon the faith. But the people who are in those ones where it's like the church owns your house and your car, and you can't do this, you can't do that, they're the ones who are likely to reject it completely.
Yeah, I mean, I always think of my friend Ray. Ray is Irish and was raised in a very Catholic culture and family. Now he's very atheist.
Yes,
I would say he's much stronger atheist than I am.
Yeah,
because he grew up in that culture, you know. So his rejection of it is so much stronger. Because I never had anything to reject.
No, of course, yeah.
I mean, I suppose my mum and dad may like vaguely describe themselves as Church of England, but it's like in the same way a lot of people in the UK describe themselves as Church of England. It basically means atheist because it's on their birth certificate. It's not because they actually believe anything.
No. It's how often have they actually been to church and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing more than anything. I think my mum and dad would probably say, if you ask them, that they believe there's something, but they don't know what it is, and they don't believe anyone else knows what it is either. I think that's probably the answer you'd get. And I think a lot of people in the UK would probably answer the same, to be perfectly honest. So I never had anything to reject. I had like a Bible when I was a kid, but it was like a gift. It was something I got at my christening, which was cultural rather than like religious, you know? And yeah, I read it, but I also read like Norse myths, and I read like the ancient Greek stories, and whatnot. So it was very clear to me from an early age, because I wasn't programmed with it in the first place.
No, I wasn't. You know, I mean, I don't know if I've ever spoken about this specific thing on your shows before, but I never bought into anything like that, even things like Father Christmas.
Nope.
Because it just never made any sense.
No, you're right, yeah, exactly the same.
But neither was it pushed on me. So my mum and dad, I'm pretty sure at some point, told me what Father Christmas was and the vote and what he did and all of that. But there was no, my dad dressing up as Father Christmas to sneak in with a bag of presents on Christmas Eve. There was no leaving a mince pie out. There was no leaving snowy footprints along the house or any of that stuff. There was never any effort to, because my parents are both like atheist people, and they're not in like a miserable scientific, No, we did Christmas. It was lovely. All the lights are up, all the trees are up. They spent a lot of money on decorations. They made it magical and happy. But what was the need for this story where all the credit for taking it went to some random fat guy in the North Pole, rather than my mum and dad, who'd worked really hard and spent a lot of their money to buy me and my sister nice things?
It's funny
with that version.
It's funny you should mention that, because that was kind of the crux of where it fell apart for me. Because they told us the stories and whatnot, but like I remember being really young, and I mean really bloody young. I can remember like the scene so vividly. My dad like kneeling in front of our fire and my mum next to me, and I remember like sitting there being a precocious little shit and saying like, our house doesn't have a chimney, does it? And they were like, no. And you could see in their eyes they were like, we know where this is going. And they were like, so how does Santa get down here then? And they were like, right, well, okay. And also like, well, I've been with you when you buy the Christmas presents.
That is a big one for me, because when I was very young, my mum didn't have a car. She couldn't drive to start with. And so we only went like Christmas shopping when my dad come. My dad used to work in London. He still does, actually. When my dad would come home at the weekend.
Right.
So the only time my mum could buy you big Christmas presents was when my dad was at home at the weekend to drive the car, which meant the whole family was going Christmas shopping, which meant me and my sister were with them when they were buying the presents.
That's it.
I remember asking, if the presents come from Father Christmas, why are you buying them? And she said something like, oh, we buy them and then send them to it.
Yes, that's what my mum dad said.
But I remember immediately thinking, that's horseshit.
Well, what's the point of that? That's exactly what I said. I remember saying like, well, why why would you send the presents all the way to the North Pole when they're up in the spare room?
Yeah.
And I remember looking at my mum and dad and saying, this isn't real, is it? And my mum going, nah.
Yeah, I remember that.
I was like, okay. And it wasn't a thing.
Bothered by that.
No, it wasn't a thing.
No.
It didn't like upset me or anything. It was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, fair
fine.
enough.
But I do remember my mum and dad saying, look, you don't tell that to other kids.
Yeah,
okay?
same here.
Because
I think my mum and dad had an understanding that I was perhaps slightly smarter than my peer group in my way I looked at the world, and that other kids might have fully bought into it. But I mean, my mentality was, all right, I'm still getting Castle Grayskull, aren't I?
Right.
So,
and do you know what? Most kids, as long as they get the presents, they're not gonna care.
Yeah.
It's a nice story. It's fine, and if I mean, I don't think I will, because that's an issue for a whole other podcast. But if I ever had kids, I wouldn't tell them that Santa Claus is real. I would tell them the truth, but I would tell them the stories.
You could tell them the story the same way you tell them about the Christmas Carol story,
exactly.
and a lovely Christmas story that you want to share. It doesn't have to be a religious sort of thing.
No. And it doesn't have to be this insistence that it's real.
No.
Because you know what? That isn't for the kids. That's for the parents.
Yeah.
That's for the parents. And also, there's the element of peer pressure there. It's because it's the done thing. If parents thought about it for a second, they wouldn't do it. They'd be like, okay, well, I'm not going to effectively lie to my child.
The difference in wealth is always a thing. In that, like, why is Father Christmas bringing some people like that PS5, and then, do you know what I mean? What's the difference? And then that little shit who's a knobhead at school all the time has just got the most expensive present.
Right.
But that really well-behaved little boy who happens to be from a much poorer family.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
How do you explain that one, eh? Yeah.
It falls apart under its own weight. And this is one of the things with me, is that I cannot I can't be doing with falseness like that.
Yeah.
Lies upon lies upon lies. It's I mean, just for anyone listening to this, I've spoken to George about this recently. I recently came to the realization that I'm actually on the autistic spectrum, which has explained a lot of things about me that I've always wondered. But one thing I've always struggled with is just lies, just deception for the sake of deception.
Like like publicly accepted lies, where they're sort of culturally accepted lies.
Or things like you're in a pub and there's a guy there who's with a girl who's not his girlfriend, and but then tomorrow night he's there and he is with his girlfriend, but he wants you to say that you didn't see him last night, but you saw him somewhere else, and then it's like, hang on, I've got to remember this lie upon lie upon lie because of your bullshit.
Right.
And he's like, I cannot be doing it. And then so you get asked a question and you have to think of another lie, and then you get asked a question about that.
Right.
And then half an hour later the subject comes up again, so you've got to remember what lies you told, because now you've got to I can't do that. My brain just will not process any of that at all. Just tell people the truth, and then you can remember the truth, because you don't need to try and make up something if it's true. You just remember what happened.
Well, it's often self-evident, isn't it? It doesn't even require you to sort of consciously remember anything.
No,
it's self-evident.
I really can't get on board with that. That, like you said, that the publicly accepted deception, and so much of the neurotypical world is built upon that.
It's true.
People lying to each other.
It's true, and it's exhausting.
It really is.
The whole thing
really
is exhausting. Yeah. It's those. I mean, it's. I think what often happens with people who are neuroatypical, and I account myself in that sort of arena for lots of different reasons. I mean, I may have spoken to you about this, Lex. Did I ever speak to you about my my problems with like. I used to have, and I still have them to a certain degree, like perceptual problems. I have like problems with hallucinations and things like that. I don't know whether it's like neurochemical or what,
Yes, I think you have talked about that actually.
It is very literally a demon-haunted world.
Yeah.
In which I live. I see things all over the place. Not like it's not overwhelming. It used to be. It's not overwhelming. It's just little things. I can see pareidolia is huge. It's friggin' huge. I can see faces and shapes.
Oh yes,
everything. Everything. Just everything. They are everywhere. I actually quite like it these days. It used to make me very paranoid, but I actually quite like it these days. I can see, like, if I see a tree, I don't see a tree, I see a monster. Yes. I can see, like, the shape of some unholy fucking thing in that tree, if I see picture cracks in a wall, it's not cracks in a wall, it's something else. It's a window to another world with all sorts swirling in it, but I find that a lot of what people accept as normal and the way they operate with one another to be massively strange, stressful,
absolutely,
and pointless. Like, powerfully pointless. And I think for a lot of people who are neuroatypical, regardless of how it is, it makes what is like the inside of the fishbowl seem like a lunatic place.
Yeah, it often makes me feel as if I'm the one who's weird here.
Yeah. It's I wrote one of my very first published stories ever was about this. It's called The Last Sane Man. And it was published in 2013 by Dark Moon Digest, and it's about exactly that. It's about being the only person who can see the insanity, and no one else can, or they deny that they can see it.
I often feel with a lot of social situations and the way in which, like I said, so much of it is built upon accepted deception, and they're lying to him, and he's like, I often feel like Roddy Piper in the They Live film, where I've got the glasses on and I can see all the blue alien things, but other people can't or don't want to.
Right.
I just think, can you not see that? I don't get, and I often feel like this is a common thing that you hear from people on the spectrum, but I often feel like there was a class that I missed at school.
Yes.
Like, this is where you're taught how to bullshit each other, and how you're taught to say things that aren't true, and how you're taught to just pretend that you believe it, and just things that just seem normal to everyone. Like, oh, you're supposed to laugh at that person's jokes because he's the boss, whereas I'm like, but it's not funny, so
it's
why
not
am I laughing?
Funny.
And I don't, I don't get things like, I can't do it. I can't do it, or someone says something that I know is not true, but I'm supposed to just let them carry on saying it rather than point it out. Because everybody else in the pub is enjoying the story, and if I point out that it's a load of shit, then I'm the bad guy for ruining that good time. But my brain is saying, I know that this isn't true because I was there when it happened, so why do I have to sit and listen to this?
It's funny. I've had this conversation with some friends of mine, and they live a very unusual life in the sense that they don't like do things like go on holiday or anything like that because they don't like it. They don't like it. They consider it to be sources of stress,
Fair enough, yeah.
And a lot of that, I think that's true for a lot of people. Like, you see a lot of people who are going on holiday, right, in a family unit, and all they do is bitch and moan.
Oh, yeah, why are you doing this? I mean, I'm very lucky that I get on really well with my immediate family.
Right.
I'm very blessed in that fact, and my girlfriend gets on great with them too, and that's really lovely. But I know other people who don't, and yet still insist on having these events, and you just think, why are you doing this to yourself?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I was discussing this with a friend of mine recently. Like, one of my ideas of hell is a family wedding.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything worse. I honestly can't. I can't think of anything worse. I find them pointless. I find them boring.
Yeah.
I don't appreciate the sentiment or the ceremony or anything.
No, I agree. I'm with you on that. There's nothing in it for me at all. But I also don't drink, so I don't even like the evening reception
that's where we differ. My tactic for a wedding is to find the bar as quickly as possible.
Yeah. But imagine enduring it without that option, George.
I wouldn't. I'd go home.
That's my tactic at work Christmas parties, where I have very much the same thing. I go for the meal, I'll wait for the speeches to be done, and then mill around a little bit, say hello to a couple of people, and then I'll go to the bathroom, quote unquote, and just fuck off home. That's my usual plan.
I mean, our work outfit's very small, and what we have every year is like a like a sort of Christmas meal out.
I prefer that.
I don't go to them. Because, and it's nothing personal. I actually really like most of my co-workers. It's nothing personal at all. It's just like, it's my time.
Yes.
If I'm outside
Do you know what?
work,
I am absolutely with you on that. Like while we've been working from home this year, so much, a lot of people, my company's been doing a lot of things like, we'll have an after work pub quiz online, and we'll do this and we'll do that, and I haven't signed on for a single one of them because I'm like, no, I'm sorry. Same as when they organise things at lunch hours and stuff. I'm like, no. When I'm not at working hours, I'm not doing none of this. This is my time now, thank you.
Really sorry. Really sorry. And even like what I often do when it's the work to do is because somebody needs to be on, because they need to look, obviously they need to look after the house and look after the service users and whatnot. I do that. I prefer to do that. I prefer to be at work, and to be doing something and being paid for it, rather than, it's nothing personal. It really isn't. I mean, it's just, when it's my time, I'm going to have it for myself,
Yes, I totally agree. I like the separation. I've always needed that. When I finished at work, I finished at work.
I think
when people said to me, I remember in my previous job, they said, "Oh, do you want a work mobile phone that we pay for?" And I said, "No, I'm all right." And they said, "Oh, but then we'd be able to get in touch with you." And I was like, "You've just answered your own question."
That's the point, isn't it? That's very much the point.
8 and 4 when I'm in the office at my desk with my desk phone. Outside of that, you're not getting in touch with me because I'm not getting paid at that point.
Exactly that. Don't want to be on the phone all the time.
The thing that ever happened to work was people taking company mobiles and stuff. That separation of people ringing them, I remember in 80s and 90s going on family holidays with my mum and dad, and it were like a proper, you were away. It was away. There were no phones, there were nothing. When we go places now, my dad's constantly getting phone calls and emails.
Right, yeah, I would put a moratorium on that. If I were going away, they wouldn't phone me, otherwise they'd get an earful,
Yeah, they'd get an earful. It's terrible. I like that separation.
Right, and I think that's part of maybe what's draining people so much, in the present circumstances and whatnot. The fact that you are always connected. What I find really odd about the culture of things like mobile phones and whatnot is that I know people who feel obliged to answer them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when they go off, it's like they have a panic attack, and it's like, I've got to answer. No, you don't.
I've got better at that. I had about 6 months off social media this year. I still spoke to people. I basically treated my mobile phone like I would have treated a mobile phone in the early 2000s. If I got a message, I'd respond to it. It's like a WhatsApp message or something. If I wanted to send somebody a message, I would send them one. But otherwise, that was it. There was no other, or sending emails, of course, but there was no social media or anything like that.
Right.
And that was really good. And that kind of helped reassess my relationship with it, in the reminding that you don't actually need this.
Exactly, yeah. I think it's because like so many of our networks and so many of our social networks operate on that media now, and people feel like they build up identities on it, don't they? So they feel like they need to reinforce those identities or maintain them.
I feel like I need to be on there for promoting writing stuff, and one of the reasons I came back is because I'm involved with a couple of projects at the moment, which I an anthology that's coming out, and I co-wrote a comic book series which has just come out, and I didn't feel that it was fair to not be online helping to promote these things.
Absolutely.
So I came back for that purpose, but I may well go off again once I finish.
I totally get that. I mean, I think it's the way you approach social media, isn't it? It's that distance. It's maintaining that personal distance. Like there are obviously like there are entire cultures of like tweeting and Instagramming everything you do.
Oh no, I don't. No, not anymore.
You know, like every little thought, there are people out there who just like it's up there, you know, it's on display all the time. They are online presences. And I know a lot of people like that. You know, I know a lot of people who do that. There are people who make a living doing that. You know?
Do you think then, this is an interesting one, because something that I've often wondered is, like, I got a friend who his previous partner had a younger brother who was like you just said, always on, you know, and they were quite a well-off family, and they used to travel about a lot. And what my friend said about this lad was that he's travelled the world and not seen any of it.
Yeah.
Because he was constantly out. And I often wonder if, like, do you not have as good memories of do you think that a lot of people will not have the same sort of memories of places because you were sat on a beach in Hawaii and yet you were pricking about on TikTok on your phone? You know,
you know what? I think there's an entire like substrata of human experience that needs to be explored here in psychological terms. So it may not even just be that, like. Now, you know, there was a time when memory was memory, right? And you had no means of just locking it in place, of locking the image in place, or of returning to the image, or for example, memories of media. You and I are of a generation where we can just remember a time when once media had passed, it was done.
Yeah.
You couldn't go back to it. There may have been a VHS somewhere, but that was it.
Before the DVD box set was even a thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So you had particular impressions in your mind that were often distorted, that were often false, but there was something to be said for even that experience in terms of like informing imagination, you know? That's your imagination exercising itself and extenuating the image, you know, turning it into something else, using it as fodder to turn it into something else.
Sure.
I wonder now that you don't even need that faculty because it's all there, you can record everything, you can store everything, you can return to everything. What effect will that have on the nature of human memory and the nature of human imagination going forward?
Well, yeah, it's doubtful because everyone will have exactly the same impression of everything because you can go back and get the facts all the time. Right. So, like, when you and I might have had a discussion in those college years of, do you remember Wacky Races, and trying to remember the name of all 10 of them and stuff. And what cars did Dick Dastardly drive? And what was that one plane called? And you'd have a laugh about it.
Yeah.
Now someone would just open up Wikipedia
and have a look.
And the names of them all, and it wouldn't be the same.
Bizarrely, I mean, we've actually started to see the phenomena that come about as a result of this, haven't we? Like the Mandela effect.
Yeah.
You know, where there are lots of people who have a memory of something that seems absolute. It seems absolutely the case, and then they find out it's not.
Yes.
And they start coming up with like supernatural explanations for why that's the case.
And stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than the fact that human memory is just shit.
Yes.
It's just not very good at what it does. You know, it's not very good for specificity. Yeah. But, I mean, have you seen the whole thing with the Berenstain Bears?
Berenstain Bears. There's that Shazam film with Shaquille O'Neal in it. Yeah. There's
Nelson Mandela, which it's named after.
The theme tune to Catch the Pigeon.
Yeah.
It never says catch the pigeon, it says stop the pigeon.
Stop the pigeon,
yeah, there's various ones. There's Nelson Mandela himself not being dead, of course.
Right. I mean, and don't get me wrong, it is interesting.
Oh, it is,
you know, I find that really interesting, because the Berenstain one got me. I thought it was Berenstein. That's how I remember it too, but it's not. And it never has been anywhere. It's always been Berenstain.
Yeah.
Always, not Berenstein. It's just, for some reason, that is the experience of a great swathe of people. And to just muddy the waters further, there are, of course, now people out there who are creating stories, but also false accounts and media of things like the Berenstain Bears.
Yes.
You know, just to dick with people.
Yeah. Photoshopping old books and stuff. But I mean, the thing with this is a couple of strands to that. It's like, I think it will rob people of a lot of group experiences, because you know that thing which we have a lot of in his memory of, where you've all experienced the same thing at the same time. So you've got the whole family sat around watching a film together.
Yep.
Or you've got you and a bunch of mates sat around having a meal together, and you've all experienced the same thing. you're not going to get that because two people are sat on the phone. The kids aren't paying attention to the film.
Yeah.
So, you're not going to have memories like that anymore for a lot of people.
Yeah, there is this atomization that occurs, isn't there, where people are locked into their own experiences and their own spheres, where they're not sort of sharing communally.
Yeah, I've seen people walking around town centres, student age, with the mobile phone on like a device that holds it in front of the face.
Yeah.
So that even as they're walking around a town centre, that isn't enough stimulus for them. They've got to be watching what's on a little screen.
Yeah, I mean, and that is something you experience quite a lot, isn't it? Like I walk everywhere because I don't drive. I've just never learned. I will learn eventually. I just never have. It's just weird. One of those things that never came up.
I did learn, and I didn't get a car till I was like 30.
Right.
Because I learned, and I was like, right, well, I've done that now, and then there was just never a need until I got to about 30, and then there was. So
right. So I walk everywhere, and I find the experience of walking really fulfilling. I like to experience the world. I like to take in the world. I like to see the world. But what I find is like the etiquette of walking, and this is as a result of lots of things, because most people drive now, and it's because most people, their worlds are much smaller as a result. They go from one place to another, and the transition is not a thing. It's not an experience. Everything has to have a destination.
Yes. I think that with car journeys, though, I remember sitting in back at a car going places when I was a kid for like 2 hours staring out the window and just thinking about things or imagining things, and you don't get that now because you'll have your iPhone on you and you'll be watching videos and
I do. I mean, it's not my place to like judge or anything, but I do like, when you see really young kids, like infants, who have an iPad in their pram with them.
Yes.
And that's the stimulus. They are constantly stimulated by something external rather than by their own developing imagination. I worry about that.
Well, where I was going with that point is that I was going to say that because of that, because a lot of people are never entirely in the place that they're in, if you know what I mean. Because, yes, they're in a place, but they're also in the place that they're looking at on the phone or whatever.
Right.
Do you think that will, in decades to come, that will mean there are far fewer ghost stories? Because what you were saying about the experience, they thought it was a ghost encounter, but it was actually the heat, it was actually this ambient noise coming off the pipes, or it was this or that. In order to experience anything like that, you've got to be fully focused on the place that you're in.
It's a fair point.
If you're stopping in a hotel room and you're not just quietly reading a book, you're watching an iPhone with your headphones in, paying attention to whatever you're watching on your iPhone, you're not going to have any of that stuff. So
it's
one of the things that account for quote-unquote supernatural experiences, you're not going to, it's almost like the ghost stood next to your bed going, woo, but you can't.
Look at me! That's a fair point, actually. There's the core of like a whole swathe of horror stories there.
There's just nothing. No one's paying any attention to the ghosts. I do think that a lot of the explanations of what, like we're saying, the stuff that actually is the explanation for ghost stuff, I don't think people will pick up on it because of phone use. I think the culture of things, like what you do in a hotel room, just quietly checking in and sitting on your own if you're travelling on your own and reading a book and stuff. You don't have that now. There's constant noise. There's constant influx. You're constantly in touch with people, so you've never got that same kind of isolation.
It's true. It's absolutely true. Yeah, it's an odd phenomenon, and I don't know. I don't know what the effects of that will be in the long term.
No one does.
Human
There's no
psychology.
long-term study of this, is there?
No, there is not. I mean, obviously,
this is a debate for people with kids, really. But I always wonder what the etiquette is, because it's so questionable.
Yeah, I would have problems if I had kids. I would have real problems with them being online at particular ages.
Well, I'll give you a scenario that gets increasingly convoluted. Just indulge this. So, for instance, I remember being on holiday a couple of years ago with my family and a couple of kids there, and really nice, well-behaved kids, not a problem at all, but they have mobile phones, which of course they do. Family sat around watching a film. The kids are on the phone. The phones are making noise. They ain't got headphones in.
Right.
So my immediate response is that that's rude.
Yeah.
The family's watching a film. They don't want to watch the film. Put your headphones in.
Or go somewhere else.
Yeah. But so that in that immediate situation, so 7 members of the family, 2 kids, they're doing that. They're being rude. That's fairly simplistic. But this is what I mean when I say that we haven't decided the etiquette on this. Because what if they were in the room pricking about on the phones before we came in to watch the telly?
Yeah. That's.
What if there's 2 kids pricking about on the phones and there's just me that wants to watch the telly? So now it's 2v1.
Right. There's a whole.
Do you know what I mean? Where's the etiquette in this?
There's a whole substrata of etiquette, isn't there? That's like not really crystallized.
It really isn't. It really isn't because I'm older and I'm from I think we're from the last analog generation, aren't we? That was
totally.
Phone.
I've discussed this with Kit, Kit Power. We are of the last generation who can just vaguely remember a time before there even were computers at home, like anything.
Yeah, we didn't get one till I was about 14.
14? Really? God, PC, I was like...
Yeah, PC.
Oh, PC, yeah. I mean, we had the Commodore Amiga.
Oh, yeah, I had a games console when I was about 8. I didn't get a computer until I was like 14.
Oh, God, no, not like a PC, no. We didn't get a PC till I was like really, really late on. But even computerized things,
Yeah.
We were just young enough to have a few years. I think I was 5.
Yeah.
When we had our first computerized element in the household,
Yes.
So
yeah,
it's fascinating to have seen that, isn't it? To have experienced the developing etiquette of it.
But because of that, my natural inclination is that the newer stuff is the rude interloper. So if I'm watching the television, which is a nice old-fashioned thing. The kids sat on the new thing, the mobile phone that's noisy. They're the one being rude. That's my natural inclination. But what if they were in the living room first before I came in and put the telly on?
Exactly.
It's not black and white. It's really difficult. It's really difficult.
It's really not. It is. You're right. There is an unspoken lack of etiquette, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's really difficult. It's really difficult. To be honest, I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm kind of like...
would have to decide what their rule is, wouldn't they?
Yeah. I think that's really... It's so difficult because you're right. There is no there's no history behind it, is there? We're developing the history now.
It's happening as we go along. So,
but the problem is because the technology develops so quickly and because it changes all the bloody time, there's no chance to develop an established etiquette because the minute you do, it's over. There's something else. Like suddenly there's Alexa.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Suddenly there's something else that brings in a whole host of other etiquette questions. So, how do you, at this point, given the nature of the technology and the rapidity with which it develops?
Yeah, you can't keep up with it fast enough. I mean, the law is slow enough to catch up with emerging changes.
Oh, the law can't. Yeah. The law is so pathetic when it comes to the internet and whatnot. Yeah. It can't. It has no idea. It has no idea.
But like a lot of our base morality comes from that, doesn't it? So what the law is about. So, our basic home etiquette of how do you use the internet? How do you use... It's so difficult to keep up with. But I mean...
Right.
Like, when I was growing up and we didn't get a computer till I was about 14 and I was about 15 or 16 when we got the internet, such as it was in the late 90s, it was very much because of how much it costs, it was very much you can have an hour on it in the evening, but that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you turn the computer off.
Right.
There was none of this. You're allowed, and the computer was in the dining room, so there was none of this.
Yes.
I'm allowed to be in my room on my electronic devices all night, only coming down to eat the meal that my mom's made. That wouldn't have been allowed in our house,
Nor mine. No, it was. I mean, we did eventually have a computer room, but even that was kind of monitored,
Yes.
And this was when it was an Amiga, so it wasn't online or anything like that. There was nothing really that dangerous about it. It was just playing video games or doing very basic word processing or messing about with the paint system on the Amiga, which was so basic, so basic. Well, actually, really advanced for the time, but pretty basic.
Playing that wagon trail, Oregon Trail.
Oh, the Oregon Trail, bloody hell.
Gosh, yeah. What do you want to do? Turn left, you've died. Oh, well, that's that game done then. Whatever you do, you just died.
You are right. I mean, the etiquette of things, I imagine it's probably why so much of internet conversation is so vitriolic and whatnot, because there is no established or prescribed etiquette at all, is there? Some cultures develop their own kind of natural etiquette.
Yeah.
But even that is not hard and fast.
But you see people, you see what that etiquette leads to, and I don't necessarily that lack of etiquette leads to. I don't necessarily disagree with it in that you get people creating these kind of bubbles whereby they're not going to associate with anyone who doesn't agree with them about everything.
Yeah,
and I think that can be somewhat damaging. But I understand why they've done that.
Right? Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I protect myself online, basically. There was a time when I was diving deep into all the cultures that basically wanted me exterminated, I was engaging with your fundamentalists who wanted me dead, your neo-Nazis who wanted me burnt at the stake and whatnot, and I was engaging with them, I was talking to them, because I thought, well, maybe that's the way to go. It's not.
No, it's not.
It's a waste of time. It's a total waste of time. So now my attitude is it's zero tolerance. Online, on my online platforms, it's total zero tolerance. If it's if you are going to be racist, if you're going to be homophobic, if you're going to be misogynistic, you fuck off. You are instantly blocked, and that's happened to a lot of people.
No, I think that's fair. I understand where that comes from and why people would be doing that.
It's happened a lot recently. I mean, I don't know what's been happening. I mean, the COVID-19 thing has brought up a lot of really dark, paranoid stuff. But some people, I thought were generally all right, have gone right off the deep end with the conspiracy theories.
I've seen a lot of that, and it's. I don't know whether to feel sorry for him or what. I don't know, but I've muted a lot of people because I'm sick of seeing it. To be honest.
There was somebody on Facebook in the writing community, actually, who I was like, I can see why they think the way they do. And the irony is, a lot of conspiracy theorists, they've seen something of the truth, in the sense that the presiding powers that be, the governments and whatnot, are going to use the situation to their advantage. They are. They're going to use everything they can to monetize their own agendas and whatnot. That's absolutely true. But then they've gone right off the deep end with it. And they've used that as the basis for extrapolating into some wild and wacky areas. And I'm like, I can't be dealing with that. So it really was, they got to the point where they started posting anti-vax stuff. And I was like, nope, that's it. Sorry, block. Sorry. You go and do that in your own arena. I am not bothered with that.
I what was it for me with somebody was when they were telling me that I had the flu. I actually had COVID at the start of this year in April.
Yes, you did, and it was bad, wasn't it?
Very bad. Very, very bad. Now, I'm very physically fit and healthy. I'm like one of those annoying people that's at the gym 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Fitter than most people. I could literally run rings around most people, but I know. I could not get up the stairs without stopping halfway up the stairs for a break.
Yeah.
Just because I couldn't get enough oxygen in my lungs. It's not like a cold where you've got like a stuffed up nose. It just felt like half. If you imagine your lungs as like a switchboard full of light bulbs, it just felt like half of them had just been switched off.
Right.
And I just couldn't get enough oxygen in them. Just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I'd get halfway upstairs, and we had a running joke because my partner got the virus at the same time. Obviously, we lived together.
Of course, because she's a nurse, isn't she?
No,
so,
she's not, but she was working for the NHS at that time.
She was working. That's it. She's working for the NHS. That's it. Sorry.
So she obviously picked it up. So we both had it.
Yeah.
But there's a joke on The Simpsons, which is something we both like very much, where Homer decides to become a mountain climber. There's a scene where you see him going up the hill and he puts his tent down and he goes, I'm going to make summit here and make base camp here and try for the summit tomorrow. And when camera pans out, he's about 4 feet up.
Yeah.
And that was like a running joke, is I get halfway upstairs, sit down, and I'll just shout that downstairs. And I say, I'm going to make base camp here for the night. Because I just couldn't get up. It was just, as ridiculous as it sounds, I would get 6 feet up, 6 steps up, and it had felt like I'd just run a marathon.
Yeah.
I remember one day, this is the extent of it, I'd done nothing. And so, you know how when you're ill, you do nothing and you start feeling a little bit all right. So you think, I might be on the mend. So I decided to put the bins out because I hadn't done it. So all I did is get the bin, take it down the steps out of our house, and then come back up. Did that, got back into the living room, literally passed out.
Wow.
Just the effort of that was insane. You know, and it's not like a chesty cough or anything like that. It's just the absolute inability of your lungs to get enough oxygen that they need. And it did that to me and my girlfriend, who's 10 years younger than me, who are both very physically fit.
Yeah, no underlying conditions.
No underlying conditions, and he did that. It's like my mum had got that, who's in her 60s, and my mum's got a compromised immune system because she had chemotherapy a few years ago. She's fine now, but her immune system has never quite recovered. As horrible as it is to even think it, she wouldn't have been here now if she'd picked that.
Right.
Because if she did that to me, there's no way she would have been able to you know.
It's true, you know.
And and I remember talking about it online because people were asking questions, so I thought I can be helpful here.
You could be helpful, absolutely.
And someone said to me, private message, not on web chat, it's not real, that COVID thing, it's just like a bad flu. And I was like, I'm telling you it isn't. And they were like, you just had a flu, Lex, trust me, you've not had a bad flu before. And I'm like, I'm going to have to block you because I am not fucking having this. This is ridiculous, you know?
I think it's totally fair. I mean, I find it, as someone who works in care, I find it insulting, you know? Because we've had to make so many sacrifices. We've had to, lock down our procedures. And we as carers, we've had to, our own personal lives, we've had to lock down to keep everyone safe.
Of course,
This thing is not the flu. This thing is not the flu.
But it's like, I just cannot believe the audacity of somebody.
No.
I have had this illness. You have read some conspiracy shite and watched YouTube videos, and you're going to tell me about this illness.
Right. And it's also the doctors and the nurses who are working to actually, in the depths of this thing, and are dying en masse, by the way, if you look at the actual numbers, dying en masse. It's so disrespectful.
I just can't believe the balls of somebody to think that I'm going to tell you about this disease that you've had.
Right. I'm some rando on the internet, and I know, you know.
That was just too much for me. I was like, no, I'm not having this. So
I mean, I won't mention names because I don't think it's fair. But the person I blocked, I stuck with them for a while because I'd had some good conversations with them before, before all this hit. And I was like, maybe they've just got some bad information. Maybe it's just maybe this is their coping mechanism. Maybe they're just anxious and it's it's fucking with their mind a bit.
Yeah, I will allow anybody any of that. I really will. I have a very wide grace period with stuff like
Likewise.
that. And I give people as much leeway as I can, because it is a very stressful situation, and not everybody's living situation is that great, and I really will be as considerate as I can with that, but there is a limit.
There comes a point, doesn't there?
Yeah.
There just comes a point when it's like, you know what? No.
Yeah.
I choose not to engage with this. I choose not to, like, to expose myself to this. And I'm not the kind of person, like, you know, I really dislike it when people do things where they say things like, oh, I've had a purge or whatnot. Well, just fucking do it.
Yeah,
and if I'm part of it, great.
Friend list and that.
Yeah, fuck off. Just don't announce it. Just fucking do it.
Yeah.
And if I'm one of them, great. You know, fucking great. I don't care.
Yeah.
I hate it so much, you know, that nonsense. Don't announce it, just do it.
If you feel that you need to remove a few people for the sake of your own mental health or whatever, then just do it. Just quietly do it.
I am not gonna make an announcement of it. I'm not gonna crow about it. You know what? If it's like it takes a lot for me to block someone. There are not
absolutely the same. Yeah.
I will put up with a lot of shit. I really will. And just, you know, sometimes it's just for information's sake. It's just to, like, because I want to see how other people think, even if they're on, like, entirely the opposite end of the spectrum.
I agree.
I want to know what they're operating on and what they're thinking, you know? But there are certain things, and if it happens, it's like a guillotine. It just comes. It's like an amputated limb. It just comes down and you're gone. You know.
Yeah.
And I kind of forget you ever existed in the next like 3 days.
Same here. Yeah.
It really is that.
The guy who I blocked is someone who I don't even remember ever having a conversation with him.
Right.
So to just randomly message me.
Yeah, it really is like the front, the balls.
I don't know what he was thinking. It's the audacity of him. I can't get my head in that mindset at all.
It's the front, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is just the front of it. Why would you randomly, like, someone you've never even interacted with before, why would you do that? Why would you... I don't get it. I don't understand, like, the motivation.
No. There's no gain in that. There's nothing... What does he think? What was the best case scenario in his head when he did that? What did he think was going to be the best way that could have possibly come out?
It's like all these weird, like, you know, and it seems to be a straight guy thing. It really does. You know, when you get these sex pests who send like messages to the women in the genre and whatnot, and it's like you see these messages that, and you're like, what did they think was going to happen?
The unsolicited dick pic is always a strange one to me. I don't get that. I don't know. The thing is, right? This isn't about the dick pic. This is a side thing.
Right.
I forgive people trying to have a flirt, because you know what? I am not one of these hyper millennial people who almost expects paperwork to be filled in before you're allowed to express fondness for another human being.
No,
I'm not about that.
But there is
the idea of having a pun. It goes wrong. They're not into it, so you walk away. I do not have a problem with anyone doing that, because that's human interaction. If you are not going to allow people to do that, the human race is going to die out, because that is how you know, oh, I like this person, I fancy him, I'm going to express that. They're either going to respond positively or they're not. If they respond negatively and they're not into it and you walk away, then that's fine. If you carry on after that point, it isn't.
No, it isn't. And also, I mean, there are ways and means as well, aren't there? Like, there are places and forums where that is appropriate.
Well, the unsolicited dick pic is just bizarre.
Or, like, or even just, like, the unsolicited message when you only know them through, like, professional stuff. It's like, just no.
Yeah,
leave them alone, you know? But if you haven't, like, engaged romantically, leave them alone, you know? It's like, just let them be.
What I am finding a lot of with regards to the COVID, I can't think of the word then, the COVID conspiracy stuff, particularly with regard to that guy who just decided to send me a message, is that there's almost like a community of it now.
Yeah, it's huge.
I think that's like account for the confidence of it, the ballsiness of it, is that it's not just that one random on the internet.
It's not, unfortunately.
And I think that does account for the audacity of just sending someone a message who you barely know to tell them that the illness they had wasn't real.
Right, unfortunately, you are now getting the narcissists and the predators who are seeing this phenomena and are thinking, "Oh, I can manipulate people. I can use this." So you've got people like Farage cropping up again, who is kind of as he would on any Vogue concept, just to maintain his own sense of influence. It doesn't matter what it is, he'll leap on it. How people can't see that man's a grifter at this point, I don't know. I just don't understand. But they are feeding the fire. They are legitimizing people in their paranoia and in the falsehoods that they believe, and that's making them feel more legitimate.
I think that feeling of community and legitimacy is adding to the confidence. Something I was thinking about the COVID stuff. Do you think there will be a lot of horror fiction about it or not? Because I can't decide one way or the other. I mean, I know there's been a couple of shitty zombie films made already, but I don't mean that. I mean legitimate horror fiction.
I don't know.
On the one hand, is it too obvious a subject?
I don't know. I think what I've seen thus far, I've seen a couple of stories that rather being about it, they acknowledge it.
Yeah.
So they acknowledge the situation rather than being about it. I'm sure we've all written a few over the period of the lockdown. I certainly have. Not about it, but just just acknowledge the situation.
Because you could have it as kind of an adjunct, as in somebody's isolated because of that, and whilst they're isolated, something's happening. Yes,
that's kind of the thing, and I also think what you might also get bizarrely is a new strain of utopian fiction. You might actually get more fiction about the post-COVID era, or about what might come. Or about what the situation can teach us about our systems and about our assumptions.
What was the kind of great era for utopian science fiction? What sort of decade was that?
Well, the Victorian era has a lot of utopian fiction, a lot of H.G. Wells' stuff is utopian.
I was just trying to establish, is it often when there's been a particularly bad period that people write that stuff?
No, it tends to be when it's when there's a great sense of looking forward, when there are new frontiers opening. What you tend to get in the aftermath of the collapse of the old ideologies and the old orders is dystopian fiction. So you get the sort of behind the picket fences stories that pick at the utopian dream. You know? It's actually it does come in ebbs and flows, utopian fiction, and it tends to occur the most when there are new horizons. So when something provides a new frontier. So space travel, that saw an advent in utopian fiction. Things like new technologies, they tend to produce flurries of utopian fiction as well, and dystopian as well. I mean, it's not. People tend to mistake you. You really need to talk to my friend Rowan Fortunewood about this. He is a professor of utopian fiction, so he knows a lot about it.
For the internet, for instance, I seem to see a lot more negative assumptions about how that could go, rather than any positive.
Yes. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because there is potentially as many utopian stories as there are dystopian.
Yeah.
And it's not even that clear. Most utopian fiction isn't. I mean, people have a problem with their perceptions of utopian fiction. They tend to think that it's about perfect societies, and it's not. It's not. It tends to be about endeavours of society or visions of society that operate within particular parameters, but which operate with regard to the greatest human good.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Or it's not necessarily so that those societies are perfect.
There's no such thing, really, is there? Because who is it perfect for?
Exactly. And by its very nature, you have the seeds of one in the other.
Yeah.
So you can write about a utopian vision coming out of a dystopian state, and vice versa.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So, I mean, there are utopian settings within most stories to a degree.
Well,
even when the situations are terrible,
Yeah.
It's an odd thing because people tend to misunderstand what utopia is about. That's the problem. They need to go back and read Utopia. They need to read Utopia by Thomas More. Which
I think it depends on your vision of what a utopia will be. Because to me, I couldn't write a utopian vision of what the internet has done, because it goes against what my idea of paradise is. Because I like getting away from people. I like being disconnected. I like being somewhere where the phone's not going to ring and I'm not going to get an email. And I'm not, I like all that. And the internet makes all of that harder.
Well, that's interesting because you can
going on holidays as a kid with your mum and dad, and apart from the once every few days when you'd find a payphone and phone home and make sure everyone was all right. Apart from that. It was utter disconnect. You didn't even have a television in the villas when I was a kid.
Right.
So you couldn't even watch BBC News or something. So it would be reading books and playing games and playing in the pool and having conversations and playing a board game. And it was utter disconnect from your normal life. And you don't get that now because, as I said earlier, you get stuff like my dad's answering the phone call or
you're always connected. I mean, when I go on holiday, then social media goes off.
Yes, well, so does mine, but you still have the phone. You do still have, and you can put BBC News on if you want.
I just don't. I ignore them. I make the conscious effort. Yeah, it's like the world can burn for a bit.
Yeah, you're away. That's it. Whatever happens while you're away. Yeah, I agree with that.
That's definitely the case. The world can burn a little.
That's why, for me, I could personally do a version of a utopian future inspired by the coming of the internet, because it doesn't allow. What does the internet do? It makes everything so connected. It joins everyone up. It means you can reach anyone at any time, and I don't necessarily think that's a good thing.
I don't want to spill the beans too much, but I'm actually writing a novel based on that exact concept.
As a positive or not?
It's ambiguous.
Okay.
It's massively ambiguous. So it's like it's set a few steps into the future, not very far, where there is a state of the internet that's full immersion.
Right.
Where you can connect to someone almost mind to mind, basically, where everyone is almost perpetually connected on the most intimate level imaginable.
I'd hate that.
Yeah,
no.
But
in a future like that, I'd end up being that crazy guy who lives in a cabin in the woods. Now, I'm not one of them. I'm not a tinfoil hat person. I'm not a gun collection 51st state sort of.
You're not a prepper.
No,
you're not a prepper.
Not at all. But if things start going that way, where people's got chips in their head to talk to each other, and I'm not. I'd be that one person who doesn't.
It doesn't happen.
If it was mandatory, I'd wreck it.
Yes, under our current systems, I would be the same. I would be no, because they're too corrupt.
Yeah.
They're just
not just that. I don't even want people being able to get hold of me whenever they want. I like to have that option. Like something of it's a strange comparison to draw, but it's the same thing. Is my grandma used to say, "Oh, it were right nice." When I was younger, people are just coming around your house all the time, and I used to think that sounds fucking awful.
That sounds awful. Yeah, that sounds awful.
Yeah, I hate the fact that, like, when you're watching Friends and Monica will come home from work and she's already got an house full of people.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh God, no. I want people around when I've asked them to come round, and I know that they're coming. But this idea that anyone could just turn up at any moment expecting a cup of tea and a chat, I don't think so. No.
Oh, well, tell me about it, Lex. I mean, I've lived alone now effectively for like 8 years, and I like it like that.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I mean, one of the things I discovered about myself, like quite recently, is I don't do relationships like other people do.
Sure.
They're just not my thing. I just don't operate well within them. I don't like the parameters of them. I don't like the structures or the strictures of them. I engage with different people on different levels, depending on what they want and what I want, and that's just the way it is, I don't do the live-in thing very well,
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I know a married couple who have separate houses.
Yeah.
They're a brilliant couple, but they just can't live together. So he's got his place, she's got hers. Sometimes they'll sleep at his, sometimes they'll sleep at hers. They go out for meals together, they go to the cinema together, they go on holidays together. It's just like they're perpetually dating. But then they go back home and he goes to his house and she goes to hers. And I can see the benefit of that.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. Myself, I think that's stunningly brilliant. I think they You know, the fact that they've defied the prescription and they've realised what works for them.
I am very open to that. I mean, my situation is much more traditional in that I do live with my partner, and I like that. I don't like the idea of being on my own for too long.
Right,
but
right.
What is very different for me in this relationship than in previous ones I've had is that through my own decisions and actions, I am utterly a complete human being on my own.
Right.
By which I mean my money is my own. There's no joint accounts or anything like that.
Yeah.
I own the house. The deed is my name only. I'm the only person who's paid the mortgage. I have my own car, which again I pay for. I have my own friends. I have my own social life.
Right.
My partner is a part of all of that, but if we were to break up, she would go and none of that would change.
Right, so it's there's a safety net quality, isn't there?
It's that I am not half a person anymore, which I kind of used to be in my previous relationships. Is that we had all the same friends, we had joint bank accounts, we were tied together. It was our house, our car, all of that. And then, of course, if it doesn't work out, which no one ever thinks it's gonna break down, but things do.
Yeah,
you lose half of your life then, and then you feel like half a person. And I decided I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be a full person and then find someone else to be with. And then if that doesn't work out, you know, emotionally bad, but in terms of everything else, there's no change.
Right, yeah. No, I totally get that. I think there needs to be more space, I really do, in culture and in, like, all of our systems in law, for example, for different
I know people, all sorts of people with different relationship situations, and if it works for them, fine. Like
I know so many.
Used to work with a lady whose husband was bisexual, straight down the middle bisexual, but he had a very strong sexual appetite for homosexual relations.
Right.
And she was fine with that because she said, if I don't let him indulge that, if we don't make that a part of our relationship, it will probably lead to resentment and we might end up breaking up. But we have a wonderful marriage. They've got kids together.
Right.
So occasionally he would go out somewhere and indulge that, and she was okay with that. They had ground rules upon it.
Obviously.
Primarily that she is his priority. So he's not going to arrange to go out with some bloke on their, you know, anniversary dinner.
Yes,
you know? Also, anything that he does, he's sensible, as in there's protection worn and all that kind of thing.
Of course.
And also, she didn't want to hear about it. So he wasn't going to come home and say, "Oh, I shagged this rate gorgeous bloke."
Right, yeah.
You know, as far as she was concerned, he was out late at the office or whatever. But as long as those rules were maintained, that was their relationship.
Great.
And that was fine for them.
I like that. I like that. I like the acknowledgement that, you know what, all of the sort of the neurotic prescriptions of what relationships are supposed to be in culture are not always right, and they're not universally applicable.
No, because I've always had trouble with this idea of that one person is supposed to be your everything.
Right.
So they're your sexual partner and your best friend and your confidant and your partner in financial things and your muse and I think that's so unrealistic.
It's romantic nonsense, isn't it? It's prescriptive nonsense. It just doesn't work like that. And also the notion, you know, I mean, culture hates this, but the notion that you can actually, like, be in love with different people for different reasons and over different things, it's totally true. It's totally true. There is no one person for most people.
No.
It just doesn't work like that. Reality doesn't work like that. And I think the insistence that it must be like that just hurts people.
Yeah, because you end up in like using the example of the lady I spoke about a minute ago. If she hadn't come to that agreement with her husband, they probably wouldn't still be together.
Yeah.
So if they stuck to that, you know, almost religious adherence that it's him and there's her and that's it, they couldn't possibly be anybody else. that would have damaged their relationship with each other. So by adhering to these apparent rules of a relationship, they would have ended theirs. But by allowing this flexibility beyond what society normally expects, it's actually made their relationship stronger for it.
Right, yeah, that's absolutely the case. And I know so many people who are in what would be considered to be, I suppose, abnormal relationship situations, which I find to be far more healthy than a lot of people who have sort of abided by the prescription but aren't happy in it. Do you know what I mean? Those couples that probably should never have been together in the first place, and all they do is bitch and moan about one another. And you know, you can see all people ever think about them is just get a divorce, just separate or whatever. You know, they should never have been together in the first place, but they feel locked in or obliged now.
Yes.
That's the damage. That's where the danger is. Your polyamorous couples, your polygamous couples, your swinging couples, you know, your couples that engage in sort of same sex or whatever. That's not the problem.
No.
That's not the problem. As long as people know what they're doing and are honest about it.
As long as everyone's open and above board, and everyone knows what everyone's doing, and if they don't, if that's per, because I also know other couples who have the thing of it's kind of an open relationship, but it's got the rule of don't ask, don't tell, as in if you want to sleep with other people, you can, but I don't want to hear about it. In that case, it is open and honest, but it's not, if you know what I mean.
No, I know exactly what you mean. No, but it's not cheating in the same way it would be.
No, because
the cheating is the lie.
Yes,
it's the deception. You know.
Yeah. So he might have been out with someone last night, but you've not asked him, and you've asked him not to tell you. So
right.
But at the end of the day, he's still coming home to you, and that's what you wanted.
That's what matters, isn't it?
You know,
That's what matters.
Because you get that particularly with people with sexuality, where they might have something that you can't satisfy, perhaps.
Right.
So,
that's absolutely true.
But I think allowing that flexibility is better than tying them to a situation that they're never going to be fully happy with.
Well, you know, I mean, one of my sort of issues with relationships as they are prescribed is that the idea of owning people.
Do
you know what I mean? The idea that this person belongs to me, I've always found creepy.
Yeah.
I've always found weird, and I don't like it. I mean, one of the reasons sometimes some of my past relationships has failed is because I don't care. I don't care if people sleep with other people. It just doesn't bother me. It's never bothered me.
I must admit, thinking about it, it doesn't me either. The romantic bit does. I would want them to only be interested in me in a romantic sense.
I don't care either. I don't care about that either.
But sexually, if you were getting that somewhere else, I won't be that bothered, to be honest.
No, it doesn't concern me. And the thing is, a lot of people, they feel that you should, you know what I mean? Or they feel as though you don't care, which is simply not true, you know. You can feel someone, I do feel that you can find someone wonderful and inspiring and fantastic, but allow them to be that for other people as well.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think I'm very strange romantic, as I am in most things. I think I'm very strange, and I think people find that really hard. I really do. Like, in terms of what they need, like, I don't get jealous.
No.
That's been a problem in the past, because people want you to be.
Yeah,
very often people really want you to be.
Don't really get that a lot. I mean, I've got a girlfriend who people seem to love pointing out to me is me punching above my weight.
Okay.
Which is, you know, I mean, she's 24 and blonde and gorgeous to look at, so people like to point that out to me, which is really lovely to hear. But people often flirt with her of both genders. She seems to attract more lesbians than she does men.
That's interesting.
Which I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just something about the way she dresses. She's got like a very 1920s sort of style to her.
Yeah,
I don't know. But I don't get jealous of that either. But that's just like a intrinsic trust, I suppose. Because I know that
I suppose so.
Even if they want that, they're not going to get it. So why am I bothered?
So why would you be bothered?
Do you know what
absolutely.
I mean? It's not like they're gonna. It's like if someone's jealous of my car or something, fine, you can be, but I'm not bothered unless you're gonna steal it. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You can want it, but you're not gonna get it. So why do I care that you want it?
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. So I
it's
don't
not
really
expending
get jealous that way either. But I suppose that's because I don't have the concept of ownership either. Like what you were saying, I don't have that.
That's it. I don't own people. I just don't. It just doesn't. It doesn't register with me at all. It's an odd thing. It's a sphere of experience that a lot of people have. They feel as though that when they are with this person that they are theirs, and that's it. It doesn't compute to me.
No, but I think people are getting better at accepting the idea of different forms of relationship. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that comes from gay culture.
Yeah,
because gay culture has always been a bit weird. Has always been odd in its relationships. They've always been. I mean, it's not universally true. There are many gay people who have very traditional sort of like heteronormative style relationships where it's just monogamous. It's just one person, But for the most part, it's a little bit more flexible in different ways.
Sure.
It often has been the case. There are a lot more in the ways of open relationships.
That makes perfect sense culturally, though, because if you're a group who's always been forced to be outside of society, why would you adopt relationship practices that are the same as that society?
Yes, actually, that is an argument I often have with a lot of my fellow homosexuals and queers. Actually, why would you want to emulate the straights? I just don't get that. Because a lot of us do.
I'm not talking necessarily about wanting to. I just mean, why would the practices that you develop be the same as the ones from the society you've been shunted out of?
It's absolutely true. It is absolutely true. And as a result, the more non-standard forms of relationship have naturally cropped up in sort of gay and lesbian culture. Not least of which because of necessity. It wasn't unheard of when homosexuality was illegal for a gay guy and their lesbian friend to get married to keep up the pretense.
Yeah, absolutely.
They could go off and have their flings and affairs and whatnot. It was far from unheard of.
Yeah.
So
apparently there's a lot of historians who think Abe Lincoln was one of them.
Yeah. There's a couple of the U.S. presidents who were either bi or gay. Lincoln apparently there's some evidence. Washington there's a fair bit of evidence.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's fascinating. I mean, God, the aristocracy of the UK, bloody hell, we were everywhere.
Well,
kings and queens. James I was in love with loads of men.
I've no doubt about that. Yeah. I mean, do you think they would have hidden it that well, kings? Particularly, do you think they would have tried because it's a king, so they could kind of do what they want?
Well, this is it. And another thing that we just find really difficult is there was a time when it was almost sort of just like we didn't have the term, we didn't have the name for it. You wouldn't have called someone homosexual or gay or whatever, but it was just accepted that men sometimes slept with men.
Yeah.
Or women sometimes slept with women. It was just part of the culture,
Yeah.
So the kings and queens would have their favourites.
Yeah.
As it were.
Yeah.
And it's very clear from certain records. There are that you can find if you go on Amazon. You will find books published of letters between priests and monks from like the 17th century where they're proclaiming their love for one another.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
it wasn't really until Victoriana that it started to become a real problem.
Regimented sort of, yeah.
It was criminalized and it was a scandal and whatnot. Even though you look at the actual evidence of Victorian society,
yeah, it's filth.
Repression breeds appetite.
It does. You get that in sort of a lot of Oriental culture, don't you? It's so outwardly repressed that when you look at the sexuality that goes on there, someone is just
Japanese culture.
It's insane even by
very conformist. Very conformist, very conservative, very buttoned down. the sort of subcultures of what I suppose you could kindly call deviance, huge.
Yeah.
Just insane.
You always get that parallel, don't you? Of it's so outwardly buttoned down, straight lace, same haircut, and then inwards. Always.
There is nothing like repression for appetite.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it, I'm telling you. You repress something, you tell someone they can't do it.
Yeah. To be honest, that's me with censorship. Nothing will make me want to buy a book more than someone telling me I shouldn't.
That you shouldn't, yeah.
And I honestly
right?
don't care which side that censorship comes from. It can be Mary Whitehouse Brigade, Christian right sort of person telling me something's morally bankrupt or whatever. Or it can be some 17-year-old blue-haired person on Twitter telling me that I shouldn't read it because it's problematic. If someone tells me I shouldn't, I'm going to go out and buy a copy.
That's generally true of humanity anyway, isn't it? I mean,
if you want to make something a bestseller, then start telling people not to buy it.
It's we know this biblically, it's the whole basis of Genesis, isn't it? You tell someone don't touch that tree over there.
Yeah.
Eat not of that tree over there, the one I'm going to specifically point out to you and tell you not to eat of.
Yeah, I don't think Lucifer even needed to get involved with that.
Of course
that
he didn't.
Instruction alone would have.
Of course he didn't. God pointed it out specifically.
Yeah.
It's like, of course he knew what he was doing. I mean, he created humans by all accounts, so he must have known our fundamental nature. So.